will sort of conflate a lot of the data that we see. So that makes it harder to study, I think. I don't know if that made any sense, but I wanted to just mention that. Thanks.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm very cautious when it comes to COVID because I have a lot of high risk people around me. So yeah, 100%. I get that. I guess I don't know what everybody's background is because I came in kind of late. But one thing you mentioned is human behavior, but also like I think recently Moderna just raised the price of their vaccine. So and Dr. Copeland was talking about it earlier about how things down the line are going to be much worse because all these diseases have time to strengthen themselves and intermingle with other diseases. Just in our opinion, what do you think? What do y'all think the future of, not just COVID, but other respiratory diseases look like with, taking into account, human nature following this pandemic, as well as government response and, vaccine companies, trying to raise the price of their vaccines and stuff?
I personally, just let me get it real quick. I'll see if then I'll hush it up. I think that the cost of vaccines to me is not. It depends on why the price is going up, and it depends on how much. I'm not really worried about I'm not really worried about the cost, to be honest with you, and I'll tell you why. And this is an opinion thing. People have different opinions about this, right? But I look at this from a capitalistic standpoint. Capitalism produces life-saving drugs, and people don't. And there's a flip side to that, right? The flip side to that is when you have like you take the United States versus the UK, perfect example. In comparison to the United States, the UK, as far as like production of novel drugs, is not even close. It's like bully ball. It's like Michael Jordan versus like a middle schooler or something. It's not even fair. But when it comes to access of healthcare, it's flipped, right? They have superior access to healthcare because they have a socialized healthcare system. So the United States produces 60% of all novel drugs on the planet every year. That's facts, right? 2/3 of all blood on the planet is made in the United States and gathered in the United States. 2.5, I think it's like almost all plasma products are derived from plasma harvested in the United States because of the laws we have. The point I'm making is this: like the price going up is not a big deal for me, but it depends on how much. Now, if you're doing some shit like your boy Skrilla was doing, where you trying to hike up the price of HIV medication by 2,000%, I got a fucking problem with that. That's bullshit, right? But if it's to justify inflation, and if it's against inflation, it makes sense. Then you got to pay the piper, man. I mean, it is what it is. Like they're a necessary evil, but you need them. That's my thought on it.
Yeah, this is actually. I just wanted to say I find myself in like a very difficult situation when it comes to this because as a physician, I have to fight big pharma all day, to get my patients meds and get insurance companies to pay for shit. And I mean, it's all basically the same thing to me. But I get it that R&D takes a lot of money and takes a lot of effort, and they got to make their money. But at the same time, I think that when you have a global public emergency like COVID-19, vaccination should be free. That is my opinion. Especially if you use taxpayer money funded the development of these vaccines, which it really did for the most part. I think that it is criminal, in my opinion, for Pfizer and Moderna to be hundreds of dollars per vaccine when it probably costs a few dollars to make them. It should either be heavily subsidized by the companies themselves or government or whatever. But I think that they should continue to be free to the public, especially since they were funded mainly by taxpayer money. I'm not a fan of big pharma, man, but sometimes they do good things, and these vaccines are one of those examples when these companies have done a good thing. So yeah.
No, and I'll try that point just to make it clear. I agree with everything Dr. CF just said, and I'm talking about the cost for governments to buy in bulk. I'm not talking about the cost of individuals. The cost of the individuals are always zero. I agree with that 100%. The shit should be 100% free. Now that's easier said than done. And it costs a lot of money to do that, but that's the way it has to be. I mean, if you're not going to protect the people of the country, then what the fuck is the government for? I mean, Jesus Christ, right? Like that's literally that's the point. That should be the point anyway. So I agree with everything Dr. CF just said. And furthermore, let me just put a little disclaimer. Pharmaceutical companies are fucked up. They're racist, sexist entities that want to make money, right? Let me just say that. However, in their interest of making money, it's a dance. That's all I'm saying. It's not like I'm a shit, a shill or whatever. Fuck no, they're racist, bro, 100%. I mean, the whole company that me and Rohan have designed is literally to that end, because we know they're racist and we're trying to exploit them for their racism to change it, right? Like, we understand they're racist. That's how they have built this shit. They're racist, right? They intentionally excluded people of color from medical research because nobody cared about diseases that affect Black people. Nobody cares, right? Because they're Black, right? So I got that. I understand that 100%. But the point is that they're necessary evil, bro. You need them. You can't do anything without them. And if you didn't incentivize them with money, guess what they would do? They would just move to another market where they could make some money, and they wouldn't even make vaccines. They would just do something else. They would just shift to something else and just do something else. It's $1 trillion market. They can find somewhere to make money. You got to incentivize them, but it's a dance. It's not like you got to let them do whatever the fuck they want. Because I agree with that. Also, they use government money to make that shit. So they do owe the people of the country, especially people of the United States, because we want to fund most of the shit. Let's keep it a bean, right? So they definitely owe the people because the people paid for it. So I 100% agree with that. I don't want you to be confused. But does that make sense to you, Miles? Are you complete with that?
Yeah. But I think my question more was like, with all these things in mind, with like increased price of vaccine, government response to this pandemic at least waning, and people's nature from this pandemic. I was asking y'all, what do y'all think like the future of viruses will look like with all these things considered? That was more of my question.
Okay, so I'm not a virologist, I'm a stem cell biologist, and I started my work in public health 2 years ago on a running scholarship because I just wanted my third degree after working in New York City on the front lines for nearly a year. So I'll take the hypothetical real quick. Here's what's going to happen. If we have anything that's even more dangerous and has a greater kill ratio, as Dr. Ian Copeland was saying earlier, right? If we get a virus that is even worse than COVID has been, and COVID has been bad, we cannot ignore the fact that it's been bad. We cannot ignore the fact that we've had millions of deaths. We cannot ignore the fact that people, the general public, cannot even take on simple measures such as masking or open their minds up to the fact that we need better air ventilation, better filtration, better testing mechanisms. Like, as soon as the tests came out, who were the first to profit from it? The rich, the elite. You saw the Kardashians having parties all over the world while no one else could get a test, right? So that's how this works. The people with money are the ones who are able to obtain any type of healthcare, who are able to obtain any type of treatment that comes first. I mean, if you look when Trump was president, he got a treatment that was millions of dollars. So we have to know that every time something like this happens, that's exactly how it's going to trickle down. And the people that are going to be hurt the worst are the ones who are socioeconomically challenged, the ones who don't have access to healthcare. I'm in New Jersey, New York. I am in one of the best places for public health to have access to healthcare right now. But when you go into the rural areas or the South, where they are completely defiant of any measures for health, or if you go into the Midwest, you see that you don't have that kind of accessibility. And prior, you asked about how the prices of these medications could affect these things. If the medication is too expensive, people won't take it. And this is seen already in the population when we talk about diabetes and insulin. Patients will constantly ration insulin because they simply cannot afford it. So you do open a Pandora's box of everything. And if a pandemic occurs, a global pandemic again, occurs, and we don't as a world look into the fact that we need to isolate cases and we need to make sure that travel is, not necessarily hindered, but we need to be testing and we need to be able to provide vaccinations for everyone and minimize the amount of harm and damage that can occur in all industries. Because if you notice, so many people, like the airlines can't even function because everybody's sick all the time. And that's why the CDC mistakenly decided to listen to the airlines and reduce the amount of time to 5 days. Oh yeah, 5 days and you're fine. But the reality is you're still going to test positive for about 7 to 10 days right now with Omicron XBB 1.5. So on a global level, that would be a problem. And it would be a massive problem because even the amount of deaths that we've seen now and the amount of deaths that we speak about all the time and the amount of people who lament, I wish I didn't go to that party, it still hasn't made an effective change on behavior. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, I 100% follow what you're saying. And thank you for bringing up the ventilation. I wasn't even thinking about that at the time. But yeah, perfect answer. Perfect answer.
No, man. Hey, look, Malcolm, man, we appreciate you, bro, 100%. I'm gonna try to get to I'm sorry, is it Pulsikin? I don't know how to say your name, bro. I'm sorry. How you say your name?
Yeah, Pulsikin. That's perfect. Thank you, sir.
Yep. It's on you, bro. Appreciate you.
All right, I just wanted to preface. Well, thank you for bringing some science to this instead of the nonsense that's been rampant on the internet. Also, just a quick background on me. I am an RN. I worked during 2020 when COVID first hit, so I know what it can do. But I just had a question about what are your thoughts on vaccine immunity versus natural immunity? I haven't seen too many papers written on that.
No, there's a lot of research on that, bro. Hybrid immunity is the best version of immunity you can have, where you have a prior infection and being vaccinated at the same time. That's the optimal protection. That's followed by vaccine-induced immunity. What people call quote unquote natural immunity is actually inferior to both of those. And the reason it's inferior to both of those is that you get a very strong response typically. But the problem is that, without getting too nerdy about it, when you take the vaccine, you only got to make antibodies to one thing. When you actually see the entire virus, you got to make antibodies to everything. And you got to keep in mind that your immune system is making antibodies to other things all the time. So by the time you do all of that, it's not a great measure. And to get that quote unquote natural immunity, you have to put yourself at risk of death to get it, right? So it's not a viable strategy for the population to say, okay, I'm not saying you're saying this. I'm just answering the question in a way that's been posed over and over again by other people, not you. So it's not a reflection of you, Pulse, again. People will say, "Oh, just let that shit run through the population, bro. It'll be all right." No, it wouldn't be all right. It'd be fucked up because a whole lot more people will die. I mean, think about what you're saying. You lost 1+ million Americans alone to SARS-CoV-2 with everything you could throw at it. I mean, it's wild. So I hope that answers the question.
Well, kind of, but I was more like, if somebody had a prior infection, do they need to get vaccinated? Because that's like the thing that I run into a lot speaking to people.
I wouldn't say we don't like to say need, because I mean we can't give you direct medical advice. I mean, we can just speak from a population level. At a population level, again, the best form of immunity you can have is hybrid immunity. So if a person's already been infected, unless they have some reason why they shouldn't be vaccinated from a population standpoint, that population isn't going to have optimal protection. You see what I'm saying? Like they're just not going to have the best version of protection that they can have. And if you do that, like I say, in a population of millions of people, you kind of asking for it. I mean, think about what you're saying. Like, let's look at what happened before vaccines, because that is natural immunity, right? We already saw what happened with natural immunity. When you look at when you look like Italy, or if you look at like Houston, Texas, or New York City, that's natural immunity at play, right? And I just want to say this also, and then I'll land, because I don't want to make it too nerdy. Back in the day, we had natural immunity, and it was called people who had some level of genetic protection survive and the other people died. That's why Black people have sickle cell trait. It's protection against malaria. Think about. I want you to think about this, and I'll land the plane. But I want you to just think about this. 1 out of every 8 African Americans has sickle cell trait. 1 out of every 6 continental Africans has sickle cell trait. Think about how many people died from malaria who didn't have sickle cell trait for that to be the case. I mean, for the people who died who didn't have sickle cell trait and got malaria and died, for it to be that common these days, if that makes any sense, for it to now be 1 out of 6 and 1 out of 8. And I'll land with that.
So you're saying it's more of a greater good type of thing to even if you cleared the virus without the vaccine. It's more of a greater good for less transmission. And
I wouldn't say it's a greater good, because you're also making a critical assumption that's untrue. Just because you got the virus and you beat it doesn't mean you're going to die from that shit the second time. That's what happened in Texas. You had a veteran. The first man to die from Delta in Texas was a veteran who got infected with Alpha and beat it, and then 8 months later died within 2 weeks from Delta.
that's
So-
what I wanted to hear. All right.
Yeah. So just because you get it, you clear it, doesn't mean you're gonna die from the shit either. I mean, that's the whole thing. Is like there are no absolutes. You see what I'm saying? Like you can't predict it. That's why vaccination is important, because you can't predict that shit. What you can somewhat predict is some level of additional protection from vaccination. What you can't predict is how you're gonna react to that shit when you get it unvaccinated. Ain't no telling. It's a toss up.
All right, that was perfect. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add. Thank you.
And I appreciate you, bro. Hey, Rohan, man, where are your anti-vax friends at, man?
I don't know, bro. I'll try to invite some of them right now. A bunch of them follow me for some reason.
Bro, that post I put up got 2,000 likes, bro, and it's got 200 comments, and they all talking shit. And then you start a room, they don't want to come. I don't understand it. I don't get it.
Me neither, bro. Let me see if I can find some of them. Give me a second.
Yeah, I don't get
Hey
it.
y'all, can I just point out one thing about this quote unquote natural immunity?
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Bruce.
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out, if you guys recall from the early days of the pandemic, we had some concerning data that suggested that the immunity that you develop from getting infected, and like Dr. Copeland, I'm not a fan of the term natural immunity. All immunity is natural. There is no such thing as unnatural immunity or artificial immunity. But we found that it was very unpredictable who was going to produce antibodies when exposed to virus. In some studies, as many as 20 to 25% of people produce no antibody after a mild illness. So it's just harder to predict whether someone's going to have a response. Whereas we know from the trials that people do produce neutralizing antibody, which is the first step to producing immunity, right? When they get a vaccine. So I just wanted to point that out.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Priya. Seriously.
No.
Oh, go ahead, Dr. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I was just saying thank you as well. That's all. Were you going to go to one of the other speakers?
Yeah. I don't know. I saw Steve came up on stage. We got sensational. So I don't know if we could get a floor to Steve real quick. And then...
Yeah, it's cool.
Hello?
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah. Guys, many states, including New York and New Jersey, have already said that you know, the COVID numbers that they have in the hospital in terms of deaths are probably overcounted by about 200%.
Can you provide a link to that so we can put it in the nest right now?
Yeah, but like what I don't understand.
No. I need the link. No. Excuse me. I need the link. And see, this is bring the facts. Bring the facts. If you make a claim, that's fine, but you gotta bring the facts on it, bro. You just can't say it and get off it, bro. So do you have evidence that is in fact the case? You said it's 200% over inflation of numbers in the hospital. Can you provide a link to that can be substantiated?
Please do. I would love to see some numbers on my home states here. Go ahead. Come on, Steve. I know you can.
Yeah. No, and again, you can speak on it, but you got to speak on that with some facts, bro. Unless you want to recant the statement because you can't produce the evidence, but you can produce the evidence by all means.
Yeah, but like you're already being. I can produce the evidence. I'll give me a few minutes.
Okay, good.
So
good.
produce the evidence.
Reduce
That's
it.
all we're
Reduce
Yeah,
it.
but you don't. But
Hey,
you know what? You're gonna be disrespectful. I'm done here.
Oh, okay. He's gonna
Listen
cry.
to Steve.
He's gonna go.
The reason that
He left.
Oh, did he leave? I still see him.
No, he left. He says connected. He did. He left. He ran. He ran for the
No,
smoke.
do not start speaking about things that we already know are completely untrue. And then you can't back up what you're doing. Anyone else in this forum, this is how this works. If you've missed the beginning, no problem. You want to make a statement, there has to be a factual evidence-based theory for your statement. There has to be some type of scientific article or other data point that we can all look at together and analyze. Thank you.
So just to clarify, the reason that you'll hear some of the lead speakers like Cope and Rohan and stuff like that cut someone off if they make a claim without having a source is because we are not trying to spread misinformation on this platform. And by the time that misinformation gets out, it takes 5 times the effort to get people to retract that and to get that out of people's heads, right? It's so much easier to believe the misinformation than it is to believe the actual facts. So rather than have someone come up, make a claim, and then say, yeah, I'm going to post a link. We also know that on our stages, we've been doing this for 2+ years now. We've probably had somewhere between 1,100 people at least bring us studies and then tell us what those studies say. And literally one person, well, 1.5 if you want to count X when he came up and he was 50% correct on a paper. We've literally had this happen. And so that is why when you make the claim, great, we're not going to have you expound on the claim. Bring your data, and then we'll go over it. We'll dissect it together.
No, appreciate that, Dr. Priya, 100%. Let's go to Sensation and see what he has. Sensation, what you got? And then we'll go to Fish Out of Water after Sensation. Sensation, what you got? Sensation, you there? I got another question as well.
Come back to me.
Oh, no, you straight?
Come back to me.
All right, bet. That's a bet. Fish Out of Water, what's happening?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Chill now, what's good?
Yeah. So my no statement. I'm not going to bring any facts or suspects, non-facts. I just wanted to know what you guys have to say about reduced. Oh gosh, I'm gonna screw up. My brain hasn't been working very good today. My voice is better, but my brain not so much. If you get the vaccination, you're more likely to get COVID. Recent data. Is that true? Not true? What should we do about getting vaccinated if it increases our risks of actually getting it? Is that?
It's so the point is with that, we actually talked about I think last room.
Oh, geez,
so no, you straight. No, you straight. No, that's all good. It's good. It's fine. So it appears to be some evidence and some data that. And this is not like population level data. That's another clarifying point. It's more like I would argue like mechanism or mechanistic data. I guess you could say like individuals who are vaccinated with the new bivalent booster may not get a added benefit of protection from infection, as in actual infection, right? But when it comes to hospitalization and death, they still get the adequate protection. So it's more of like an issue with infection as opposed to actual like outcomes post-vaccination. But there's some evidence to that, but it's not really how do I put it? It's not well defined yet. I think like in 3 more months or 4 more months when we actually look at it, we'll have a lot more evidence to it. But right now it's kind of like at best it's preliminary at best. It's not irrelevant. It's not irrelevant at all. It's not irrelevant because you got to look at that shit. Because like we said earlier, this shit is complicated. But right now the evidence is very like sparse. It's not like a set in stone, but that's for infection, not for hospitalization or death. I know that sounds real fucking confusing, man. I'm sorry. That sounds real
that's
mushy.
Totally straightforward. I get it. And what you laid out earlier was really helpful in terms of like the risks versus rewards of getting vaccinated, the immune response, the development of antibodies. Great stuff. So I really appreciate all the information. I just wanted to I know that's a question that a lot of people are having. And
no, it's been common. It's been a common question, and it's a reasonable question. Actually, it's a fair question because it keeps getting pushed out by the news and shit. So I think that's a hella reasonable question, actually.
Yeah. If it makes you more at risk of getting the disease than if you didn't get vaccinated, is that really an advantage? But I'm just kind of weighing that with what you already said. I still think that the answer is yes. I mean, get vaccinated because it's ultimately your risk is less. So, but
it's correct. No, man. Wait, Drew.
So I guess kind of to your point, if you're not speaking directly to it, I guess it's kind of related to it. But like the communication behind some of the things, like for instance, I'm on
you're a corrupt data.
Like Instagram
Hey, Steve. Hey, Steve. Do not
No.
interrupt me.
No. I'm going to say something. You're going to be quiet for a second.
No, I'm not. I can just mute you, bro. I can just mute you. That's not how this shit works. No. Yeah, look. Hold on. Check it out. I'm sorry, Drew. Give me 1 second. Look, bro. Look. Listen, bro. I understand that. You know, bro. Relax, bro. I'm trying to give you. Just wait a second, bro. Just hush. Just be quiet. I know it's hard for you to do, bro. I know your privilege is kicking in and it's killing you, but just hush it up for a second, okay? Like you literally, it's not the race car, bro. Bro, it's not a race car, bro. Oh my gosh, bro. All right, I'm gonna just remove you real quick. I know, I'm a motherfucker.
They never
I know, I'm a motherfucker. Look, bro, I'll tell you right now, bro. Your ass could be black. I tell you that shit straight up, because nobody gives a fuck when I get upset. But anyway, if you just hold on a second, we will. If you just request again, we'll bring you back up. But you're going to chill the fuck out, bro. I'm not asking you. So, my bad, Drew. Go ahead, bro. That shit was rude as hell. Go ahead, Drew.
Nah,
you were saying something?
No, yeah. So the issue I'm having, right, is some of the communication around just the increased risk of infection as far as like this variant XBB 0.15, right? I probably messed that up, but 1.5. Excuse me. Anyway, like there was a post on by Baller Alert on Instagram. Matter of fact, like, you know, I watch, you know, Spiritual Word and, you know, Shade Room, all that. I follow some of those things on Instagram. And the way it's presented on certain platforms is like vaccinated people are more at risk for infection with this new variant. And it leaves it just to that. But when you just throw that out at people and don't give any actual context behind it, and it's not clearly communicated, then people sit there and say, oh, see, look at the vaccine, it makes you more susceptible to the virus. When in actuality, that's not the case. So it's a little bit to the point that was making to the speaker that they were talking earlier. No, it's not that, at least in this particular example, it's not that this new variant or being vaccinated somehow makes you more susceptible to the new variant. It's saying that the immune evasion, if I can even use that term, of this new variant is on a level that we haven't really seen from previous variants before. So it has the ability to essentially duck, dodge, or sidestep some of the acquired immunity and even innate immunity that you picked up from your primary series, and even maybe that first booster that you got along the way. Some people in their second boosters and such. And so, but also, well, actually, in terms of vaccinated, it's talking about that. However, it's not saying that just because people are unvaccinated that they're somehow in a better position. They are in a very bad position. If we can do that for people who have acquired immunity because we've been to practice, and we probably had a prior infection as well, and it still has the ability to do that, then imagine having an unprepared body, you know, and what that's going to feel like. You know what I'm saying? So that's really what the issue is about it. And so for anything, and like I said, I know there's more data to come out about these bivalent boosters and their effectiveness as far as, because like basically we're kind of banking on immunogenicity data, but it's still it should be an encouraging signal to say, look, get your updated bivalent booster, get your immune system a chance to look at that Omicron spike, get a little practice in, so you can be prepared for it, just in case you come in contact with it, so you can have a better chance to fare better. That's all that for. So I don't know if that's what the that speaker was speaking to, but I've seen some similar things about that, and that's outside of like Steve Kirsch making weird charts and saying, see, if you get vaccines, you're more likely to get, you know, the virus and all that. Like trying to find signals, he can't even find his hairline. But
dead in a sleep. I'm dead in a sleep, dog.
You know what I'm saying? So like that's one of the things. So I think some of the communication behind it could be a little bit more better. Wow, I said more better. Yo, I'm Ja Rule out here, yo. A little bit better than what it is. So yeah, I just want to speak to that because that I'm seeing the same thing the last speaker was talking about. Yeah.
Drew, thank you so much.
Drew, look, bro. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think one thing that is missing a little bit in the context from what the media is sharing about some of this data is this data doesn't address human behavior, right? So there are behavioral issues that can confound this data. If everybody who got the bivalent vaccine thinks, oh, great, I'm super protected now, so I don't need to worry about distancing and masking and things like that when there is a highly infectious strain, you can imagine that those people are at more risk. So to me, the data doesn't really comment significantly in a robust manner on whether or not the bivalent works or not, because we know that it works. We have data to suggest it keeps people out of the hospital and keeps them from dying. What it does suggest to me is that it cannot be vaccine only, which we've never said, right? But unfortunately, this is what public health policy has become in the government now. And we're acting as if masking and distancing and these things are not important. So to me, that's what this paper is sort of more showing us, the weakness of not knowing behaviors. And then the final thing I'll say, and I'll land, is the way the media is describing and characterizing the study is false. And it makes no sense, right? It's like if the media came out with a headline that said having a fire extinguisher in your house makes it more likely that your house will burn down. How is that possible? Right? That's not actually what's happening. So I just wanted to point those two things out. Thanks.
Your boy Steve is back on stage, Dr. Copeland, okay?
Okay, no, I appreciate that, bro. No, thank you, Dr. Priya, for the explanation, and Drew, appreciate you as well, bro. All right, Steve, look.
You
Let's
guys,
try
you
one
guys
more time, bro. Just relax.
genocide.
Just relax, man.
You're
Relax. Go ahead, bro. Go ahead. Don't mute him. Let him talk. Go ahead, bro. We're supporting genocide. Go ahead. You got it. You got the floor. Go ahead, bro.
There has been increased excess deaths in every part of the world. What else do you blame it on? Because it's a lot higher right now than it was 2 years ago. A lot higher.
Okay. So that's the claim. Okay.
But this is his second claim. What happened to the link from the first claim?
Right, that he didn't send. Oh, bro, you already know. Bro.
No. I commented on that because
hey, bro. When I'm talking, don't talk over me, bro. That's the last time I'm gonna tell you that shit. I'm getting sick of it.
I'll slap the fuck.
Like I was saying.
Talk to me like that.
Oh, no. Don't touch him. Leave him alone. You're gonna slap the fuck out of me over on the internet. How this gonna work out?
Fuck out of you in person, man. You're supporting a genocide.
You will smack the fuck. No. Hold on. Wait. Let's walk it down. I'm on a phone. You on a phone. You're gonna smack the shit out of me in person. How that's gonna play? You got a teleport or something? You from Star Trek? What's going on? Break it down. Help me understand it.
You're supporting a genocide, and you're a piece of garbage for doing it.
And I'm a piece of garbage. Okay, but
you're supporting a genocide because there's been deaths
I got you.
in every single part of the world that have drastically gone up. They're way higher. Okay, buddy, why don't you hey, do this? Do me a favor. Go to England.
Okay.
Go to England and look at the ASDR death rates per 100,000 person years. Look at every single category of vaccinated and unvaccinated for the last 15, 16 months. Typically, when you look at all categories, the death rates of the vaccinated are around 300 to 500% higher. That's not a win.
I mean, we have looked at that.
Some more shit you get. Hold on. Let me talk to him. Hold on.
You don't have a person here that can out-debate me.
Wait a minute, bro. So I'm still stuck on the slap beat. Hold on, bro.
He thinks he's debating.
Hold on. I'm still stuck on the slap beat. I'm trying to understand. So hold on. Let me ask you a question. Can you use the technology that you're going to teleport your hand and slap me with to save some of these people you talking about dying? That would be fantastic.
Oh, no, I could drive there.
That's like some...
Maybe he can operate.
I can drive there and do it.
Bro, I'm saying...
I can drive there.
I mean, bro, like real rap. Hold on.
Bro, I can drive there.
Real rap. Drew and Rohan, my man has mastered the KO Ken.
Look, let me tell you something, buddy.
My man got the KO Ken.
Let me tell you something.
Buddy, I'm not your friend, buddy. I'm not your buddy.
You're a doctor supporting a genocide. I would have no problem kicking your ass.
Oh man, he gonna kick my. No, this is good. This is good. Oh man, this is good.
I got a question.
Oh, go ahead, Drew. Go ahead, bro.
Wow.
What do excess deaths have to do with a vaccine? Can you explain?
This is the man who just said he would drive to England and Florida. So just an FYI.
That's not
oh
what I said.
God.
Clearly, the vaccine is affecting your fucking brain.
He's a Florida man. Is that what you're telling me? Is that what he said?
I just looked up his profile. He's from Florida.
Seriously, no, Steve. You said that supporting genocide. We're just telling people how vaccines work and the advantages.
Okay.
To them.
So explain to me why have deaths skyrocketed in every part of the world? Explain it.
We just went through the worst pandemic in 100 years. I'm thinking that might have something to do with it.
So
that is the worst point possible.
So Steve,
that is a garbage point.
Can you tell me?
It's a garbage point.
Hey Steve, can you tell me what's happened to TB rates globally in the last 2 years?
It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You think this is a point?
Hey, dude, take a breath.
You're not making a point. You're not making any
focus. I know it's hard. I know it's hard to hear other opinions, when you walk through life thinking yours is the most important. But let's try
Because
to
you're
focus
supporting
for
a
second.
genocide.
Why have TB rates climbed in the last 2 years? That is a fact. You can look it up on the WHO website in case you're wondering.
So
and
the
I can
whole
pull that up in a second.
so
Since you don't have an answer, I will give you the
So that's your thing. The whole world is
answer.
dying of
Calm down,
tuberculosis.
take a breath.
Could you be any more full of
Take
shit?
a breath. Otherwise, we're just going to have to assume you're not actually here to learn anything or discuss anything, and you're just here because you think your voice is super important
Nothing to do with
and that other people need to hear
nothing
it.
to do with my
Is that what we should assume since you're not?
Nothing to do
Bro,
with my
hold on,
voice
bro.
is going after
Bro,
Congress.
bro, relax.
It's
bro,
going after
bro,
Congress.
hold on, bro. Dr. Priya,
You're
bro,
criminals.
Dr. Priya's talking. Bro, Dr. Priya's talking, okay? Dr. Priya's talking. And look, listen, bro. It's not her fault that your head is built like a hammerhead shark, my G. Okay? It's not her fault. It's not my fault either, right? So just calm down, take a fucking breath, okay? And just let's have a conversation, bro. Unless you just want to keep swimming across the fucking Atlantic and eating all the goddamn tuna and shit, just relax. Damn.
Dude, because
So,
Go ahead, Dr. Priya.
just hold on. So, tuberculosis is a great example of why we're seeing excess deaths. So, for the first time in 20 years, we have seen death rates climb for TB. And the reason we have seen them climb is because of the pandemic, directly related to the pandemic for multiple reasons. One of those is funding that went traditionally to TB programs was used in those local areas
Provide a
for
source.
COVID programs because people were dying from
Wait,
COVID.
Dr. Priya,
more
Dr.
than-
Priya,
prove it.
yeah.
So here's what I'm
Hold
asking.
on,
I'm
hold
asking
on,
you to prove
hold
to me.
on.
Oh, for
on.
fuck's sake, I just
Hold on.
told you I'll pull up the article. It's from the WHO. Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
hold on. Okay, so he had to ask for a link.
No, that's not what I'm asking.
Jesus, bro, shut the fuck
Hey, you-
up, bro. Goddamn.
I'll slap you.
He asked for a link. Bro, you can't slap me. You're on the internet, bro. Come on now.
Fucking
You are
genocide,
5'1". You are 5'1", my G. Come on now. I'll sit on you. Shut the fuck up. Anyway, like I was saying, yo, Dr. Priya, could you please send that link to Rohan
Yeah,
so
do
that
you
he
want
can
me to-
post it in the nest?
Do you want me to do it right now or do you want me to just finish my thought?
So
and
your
I'll
link is
send
going to
it?
prove all these excess deaths.
Hold on. In fairness, let's do it right now.
Okay, all right. Rohan, I'm just going to text it to you, okay?
All right, bet.
Yeah, just to be fair, because we asked other people to do the same thing. Let's try to be fair to Steve. And Steve, while we wait, man. I mean, Steve, why are you so hostile, man? Come on, man.
Because you're supporting a genocide, and the evidence is in front of you.
Steve,
there's no way you can still support.
Steve.
Because you're willfully
Steven.
ignorant.
I got it. I'm willfully ignorant. What do you do for a living, Steve? We're waiting for that source from Dr. Priya. What do you do for a living?
I own 3 companies,
Steve.
buddy.
You own 3 companies, buddy. That's fine, buddy. So what do you do in these companies? Explain.
None of your fucking business.
None of my fucking business. I'm sure it's a very lucrative business model. Shit. Oh, this is fun.
There you go again. See, like the very first.
Hold on, bro. What's your highest level of education, bro?
You're obviously afraid because you keep cutting me off.
What is your? I'm asking a simple question, but you won't shut the fuck up long enough to hear the question. What's your highest level of education?
Master's, bitch.
Master's, bitch. You have a master's in bitch. That is, that's impressive, bro. I've never met a motherfucker with a master's in bitch before. I mean, that shit is off the charts, bro.
I've met a doctor
you
who's in jail and it's fucking.
You are a very talented shark. I mean, you're out here walking around the land and shit. I mean, bro, this is amazing, bro. You're the first amphibious shark I've ever met with a master's degree in bitch, bro. Where you pick that up at, bro?
You're supporting a genocide. It's clear as day. You're willfully ignorant. The evidence is in front of you. Excess deaths have gone up in every part of the world, and you are batshit crazy if you're going to try to blame it.
I'm batshit crazy.
You're out of your fucking mind.
Bro. She didn't blame it on TV, bro. So you so fucking.
You know
bro.
what you guys
Listen,
are. You know what you.
You have to go put your head back in the water, bro. Your gills are fucking up, bro. It's fucking you with your brain. She didn't say that, bro.
Steve, I got a question, man. So you're saying that we're supporting a genocide. Can you please, can you describe a mechanism by which these vaccines could kill people at an efficient rate? And mind you, these are vaccines that have mRNA, fat, salt, sugar, and some buffers. And so I can find all of this in the cheeseburger that I literally ate at Five Guys 2 hours ago. So I'm on.
Because okay, let's go back and take it to another level. You actually trust that those are the ingredients in there. That's your problem. You actually trust it.
Do you trust the Doritos that you eat? Do you trust the ingredient list of the Doritos that you eat?
I do, and I'll tell you why. Because there's not a fucking agenda behind it.
Oh,
They're not telling the whole fucking world you have to eat these Doritos. Guess what I will tell you. When they start telling me,
do you understand how corporations work?
Do you understand how the world works?
Wake up. Hold on, bro. Hold on. Before we go,
do you understand how the world works?
Hold on. Okay, I muted everybody because I can't hear shit. I can't hear anything. Hey, Rohan, real quick.
Well,
you know what killed me about that whole exchange? I'm gonna shut the fuck up. You know what killed me about that whole exchange, bro? It was a fucking pause, bro. He said, "You know what? Do you know how the world works?" That pause was fantastic. Hey, yo, no bullshit, Steve. Real shit, Steve. That was a fantastic comedic pause, yo. Your comedic timing is on fucking point. I give you that, bro. See that timing comes from that Atlantic Ocean. When you was eating all them goddamn tuna out there and shit. That's what all right.
Wait.
So can I just?
I want to help us.
Well,
laugh a little bit.
hang on.
Proof TV is killing off the world. Go ahead.
Let me just discuss the article real quick and try to make the actual points I was trying to make.
Oh yeah, please, Dr. Freeway.
So my point is this: TB is an example of what I'm talking about. So TB rates have risen, and they have risen directly related to the pandemic. Lack of funding for these things, lack of healthcare for these things, the rise of rates in HIV also related to lack of funding for HIV programs globally because everything went to the pandemic, right? So that's just one example. But we also understand that rates of other disease deaths have climbed for two reasons. One, the virus itself directly is causing deaths. But we also know that because of delays in care due to hospitals being overwhelmed globally, there were delays in getting cancer diagnosed at early enough stages. There were delays in getting people to the hospital. Right now in the NHS, the average wait time in A&E, the ER, is like 15 hours. Right. And to the point that he made about looking up data from the UK, what he doesn't realize.
We're way past the first screen.
And what people on stage may not realize.
We're way past the first screen.
Don't even go. Hush it up.
I feel like these are basic kindergarten ideas, right? That nobody can hear two people talking at once. But anyway, so when he brought up the UK data, what he doesn't realize, and what people on stage may not realize, is we have idiots in Clubhouse doing the same thing. So we have actually looked at the data. We looked at the data in depth with Fazé Goon. Do y'all remember that when he brought up the tables and I looked at the tables painstakingly and we spent 30 fucking minutes on those goddamn tables, and the tables said what? In every single age group, in every condition, vaccinated people were dying less frequently than unvaccinated people. Right?
Then you're lying.
So again,
you're lying.
The excess death
straight up, you're lying.
From the NHS.
I will pull up that data right now.
Not indicate
pull up
vaccinated people are dying at high
pull up the fucking
rates.
Steve,
It's super easy to come on stage.
You're a lying piece of shit.
Just the last thing I'm gonna
pull
say.
up the fucking data.
It's super easy to pretend and name data when you think people aren't actually going to go and do a drill down of that data. But that's not this room, and that's not us. We've already looked at that data, and you are incorrect. You are spreading. You're either lying about it, or someone told you and you believed it without verifying it yourself. And I don't know.
No, I've combed through it.
Dr. Priya,
I've looked at the data more than you have.
Dr. Priya, I'm gonna tell you
I know the data better than you do.
Dr. Priya, I'm gonna tell you.
I know the data better.
Hold on. I'm gonna tell you where you messed up at, Dr. Priya. I'm gonna tell you where you messed up at. See, you made the assumption that sharks have ears and they don't. They just run around smelling, biting shit. It's all day long.
AFDR data.
They don't.
Okay, not insult hammerheads are
every
great
category
sharks. Why would
vaccinated.
you insult them?
You know what? I'm sorry.
look,
you said you have data, number one, so we'd love to see it. But I have a question for you, and it's based on your Twitter profile. So I'm sure you're ready and willing to back up anything you posted on your Twitter, right? Steve?
We had to put him in the request because he doesn't know how to hold his tongue.
Oh, okay. So let me just, because we really do have a lot of fun with this when it happens. Steve decided to post a tweet by a certain Peter Sweden, not really sure who he is, that he's not anti-vax, he's anti-mRNA. And I think y'all know exactly where this is about to go. They inject most of us are laughing, but we'll see why. They inject a synthetic code into your body that tricks your cells into producing the spike protein. It is not a vaccine. It is a gene therapy with no long-term safety data. It's just common sense to not want to be a test subject. Steve, can you explain to us exactly what gene therapy is?
But before he does, we're gonna bring him back up. But before we do, Rohan, I sent you something in the back channel. Can you Steve, just wait a second, bro. I sent you something in the back channel, Rohan. Can you post that up real quick in the nest?
Yes, sir.
And I'll just give a quick PSA. So for 5 cents a day, you too can save a hammerhead shark. Listen, this is real shit. Okay, I posted it in the nest. It's a nonprofit, and they do research on hammerhead sharks, bro. You can save Steve's people. And Steve, listen, I meet you in the middle. It doesn't even require a vaccine. All it requires is 5 cents, so we can save the coral reef and shit, and your people can continue to munch on all the tuna that you can catch, bro. I'm trying to help you, bro. Okay, I'm here for you.
And you're actually
we in this shit
like
together.
you're a good faith debater. That's the funny.
Bro, we're in this together, bro.
We're not in this together.
I don't think you fucking.
You're the enemy, man. You are the enemy.
I am not the
You are
enemy.
the
I
enemy.
love all people, including sharks. Stop it. That's bullshit. I resent that remark. I'm not a sharkist. I love sharks. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Posted that's cool.
See, look, y'all go look at that and go donate, bro. We need to make sure that Steve's people get all the research they deserve. God damn it. That's why he's upset, because y'all won't help him research. Y'all on bullshit.
Steve, you said, why does your tweet say that these
Why are we moving away from the ASDR data? Why are we moving away?
Oh, my bad. Go ahead. My fault. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Pull it up. So here's what I will tell you. You can go, and if you interrupt me one more time, I'm done. You can go onto ONS.
Oh, I guess you're done. I interrupted you. Oh,
I mean, don't threaten us with a good time, man.
Bro, the privilege is wild, bro. The privilege is off the chain, yo. Real quick, if I said something and somebody was like, yo, can you prove that? And if I could prove it, I would be so happy to prove it. I would be like, yo, 1 second, that's a cool. Let me get a link. Well, here's what happens when you don't have support. You like get upset, you rant, you threaten to beat people up. Bro, you could have just get to the link if you had a link.
Yeah, that smack shit is funny as fuck. Like, bro, I'm still trying to figure out how the technology would work. Like, real rap. Side note: if this man has the technology to reach through a phone and smack the shit out of me, bro, we need to get him, Al Gore, and Will Smith in a room, stat, right? We need this right now. This is life-saving technology right now, right? We could have been slapping motherfuckers through the phone 15 years ago. Can you imagine the fucking markup on that shit, Rohan? For an extra $5, you can smack a motherfucker through the phone. Come on, bro, that's fantastic. Fuck all this vaccine shit. That's the move. We on bullshit. I'm on bullshit. Drew, we all on bullshit. But what are we doing here? Let's get my man Steve back up here so he can tell us about the quantum smacko ray so we can get this goddamn smack machine popping. Y'all on bullshit. Fuck all that other bullshit. Let's get this money.
I think he left, but my question to him, because I wanted him to explain that this is gene therapy. So first, let me back up for a moment. The account that he retweeted, and shout out to Aisha for being the timeline investigator, but the account that he retweeted is a common spreader of misinformation. It's a dude that has no kind of scientific literacy whatsoever. He literally operates just off this. I'm not gonna go into. Y'all know what I'm about to say. But he feels like he should have an opinion on this thing because of the way he looks, and it's amazing. I've seen other tweets from him before, and they are some stupid things. So, literally, Steve's faith and his fervent belief in what is being said is not even based in reality. It's based in identity, and I'm gonna leave it at that.
But that's what it always is, bro. It's like, in all, to be serious for a second, like it's never based in like data. Like it's literally what you said. It's identity. Like, oh, I'm unvaccinated. I'm vaccinated. It's a political thing at this point, bro. It's just so fucking. It's so weird. Like I watched this whole thing on Life, and I was talking to anti-vax moms, and here in Texas, I'm in Texas, obviously, and they were talking about like the lady was just, she wasn't even being like dogging about it. She was just asking, okay, what are your thoughts and why, and blah blah blah. And the lady was like, this is what she said. She said, well, you never know. There could be an issue with vaccines, and then we wouldn't know, and then I would have exposed my children. I'm like, well, bro, wait a fucking minute. There could be an issue with anything, so you're just gonna walk around your whole life like that? It doesn't make any sense. What it is they have just adopted this identity behind it. And when you ask them questions like, hey, can you explain mRNA-based vaccines? Can you explain the epidemiological argument? Can you go through relative risk? Can you go through, incidence rates? Anything like that. Any level of, from mechanism all the way down to the clinic. They can't give you shit. They can't give you shit because they don't know shit. Because between the privilege and the political ideation, they don't have to know shit. All they got to do is get on the internet with Grant Cardones, the Grant Cardones of the world, and have a motherfucking secretary. That's all I got to do. And it doesn't require any data to have a secretary. All it requires is fucking the lubrication of ignorance, and you can have a goddamn anti-intellectual secretary. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to have. So yeah, I appreciate your comment, Drew. That's really what it is, bro. It's literally like identity. It's like, this is my identity now type shit.
Yeah, I'm actually going through his timeline right now. I'm just looking at the people that he's retweeting with this misinformation and such, and all of them. This is quite embarrassing. I don't say it's embarrassing, but it's there's an agenda here. Oh, here you go. Alex Berenson. I would love to see Alex Berenson try to pass a high school biology class. That'd be hilarious. Stupid ass. Oh, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Of course. Why not? That's a guy. Listen to him talk. When you listen to Robert F. Kennedy talk, does that guy make you think you shouldn't be vaccinated? Like, I'm scared as hell listening to him talk. Like, man, look, I don't know what you got going on. And that's kind of insensitive for me to say. But I probably wouldn't want to take advice from somebody like that, to be honest with you. This is what we got. This is what we got dealing with, man. And dude was so adamant about it because, again, it's tied to identity. He's like, wait, I'm a god. I'm not special. This preferential treatment I've got my whole life, he's now realizing it's not real. That there's things that happen in this world that don't care what he looks like or where he comes from, and he's got to recognize and deal with the fact that he's human just like the rest of us. And for some people, that's a little bit hard for them to swallow. But I'm done talking. Can we?
No, that's well said, Drew.
Oh,
wait. Go ahead.
I was going to say, let you out, but I know Cindy had her hand up saying.
Oh no, 100%. Yeah, we're gonna get to Cindy and Chris and lifted block enthusiasts. Cindy, what's happening?
If Baby Shark comes back, I just really need someone to ask him to define genocide, because I'd like to know what targeted nation or group or race he is ranting on and on about. Because that's just not happening. It's everywhere. It's everyone. Like, genocide is such a wrong term to use. It's hysterical. I'd like to know how he defines it.
No, that's a great point. And side note, from now on, that man's name gonna be Baby Shark. That's fucked up. I didn't mean to do that man like that, bro. That man, every time he come here, that man's name is gonna be Baby Shark. That is terrible. I mean, I call him a hammerhead shark, but Baby Shark is actually fucking worse. That's actually worse. Well done, Cindy. That's actually worse. Fantastic. But no, I agree. That's a great question. I wish that he was in here to answer it. Maybe when he gets finished, just keep swimming. He'll answer it when he comes back.
Do we still have a young woman named Melanie in the audience who's seems to be posting a lot of crap in our chat little.
Oh yeah, request. Go ahead. Come on, don't be scared.
Freebird 897 Melanie, who has my favorite quote tweeted.
Shout out to Ed. He the one who sent me the link. Oh man, I done messed it up.
Simone Gold. We all know how much we love Simone Gold around these parts. Vaccine doses I mean, you posted it. We expect you to hold to it. So just an FYI.
No, fantastic. Yeah, I would love for the request. Let's go to I think because it's not really PTR order. It's kind of like it doesn't really do that. It's kind of fucked up that way. So I think it actually is on lifted. Lifted, what you got?
Hello, doctor. I just quickly 10 seconds, please. Yeah, you guys. Last time I tried to ask a question, you kind of misinterpreted it, and I didn't get a chance to. But anyway, I'm past all that. The name of the room sometimes can be a little intimidating, I think, for some people like me. Just a suggestion, like get educated or something, because I just want to get educated. I love hearing you guys talk and your opinions and everything, but I listen to everybody, right? I do listen to some of those crazy rooms you guys talk about, but I really like, I wish I could get your opinions on a couple, just two things quickly. The last caller, the Steve guy, I was watching CNN, and I don't have the study, but I saw Dr. Leanna Wynn say that the numbers were misconstrued. But quickly, and then my other point was, sorry, I get so nervous with you guys. I've heard the argument that prior to vaccines, simple hygiene improvements like washing hands and clean water, separating wastewater, did a lot of improvement for health. I just want to hear you guys talk about it. That's all. Thank you very much. Just want to get educated. Thank you.
So let's take the first point. So if you go from like 0 to 100, I'll make it easier. If you go from like 1% to 2%, that's a lot, right? Twice as much. But in the grand scheme, it's not 100%. So like before you had sanitation and shit, like it was like a crapshoot. I mean, it was terrible. Life sucked. I mean, it helped for sure. Hygiene helped. I mean, hygiene helps now. Even today, it helps obviously, right? Because hygiene is helpful even for COVID. Like hand washing and this kind of stuff is very helpful. But those things help because of like how they limited like spread of viruses and bacteria. Like you look at like bubonic plague, for example, perfect example. Bubonic plague still exists. Bacteria is a little different, but the principle remains. Bubonic plague exists right now. Everything you see a squirrel, you take 100 squirrels, one of them motherfuckers got fleas that are carrying bubonic plague. Today, right now in the United States, we catch them all the time. We catch them all the time. You catch 100, 200, 300 squirrels, one of them going to have the bacterium that causes it, right? But because we don't have like hay beds and fleas and rats and uncontrolled blah 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 blah, we have flea collars now, and we live in houses, we run on water, and we take baths every day, blah blah. It's not a problem. You know, it's a disease of yesteryear. At least in the in more developed parts of the world. Those things are not irrelevant, but I mean, they're not going to fix this problem. This problem is a result of population density, and we're going to have to get creative to fix the problem. I mean, there's never been 8 billion people on the planet before. You know, you got to factor that in too. Like we're in like uncharted waters with this like population stuff. Like we got 8 billion people on the planet. I think by 2070, it's gonna be some wild. It's gonna be something wild. Like I think like 2070 or something. Somebody can fact check me on that. It's gonna be like 9.6 or some wild, crazy number, some shit like that. The point I'm making is that we're gonna have to continue to get creative with this kind of stuff. Because population density will take this shit to the next level with these viruses and shit. To the other point about a doctor saying the numbers were skewed. Yeah, and it is not me attacking you. I'm just giving you this as like a tidbit. You can't, and I know it's hard because a lot of people are laymen. I hear doctors on TV and the news say shit that's wrong all the time. I hear doctors outside of their specialty talking about shit they ain't got no business talking about. I hear cardiologists talking about virology and virologists talking about pulmonary. I mean, they're all over the place, right? You just because somebody says it on TV doesn't mean that it's accurate. You know what I'm saying? And that's not chastising you. That's just reality, and it's not fair to you because they're telling you shit that's not accurate, and you can't discern it, and it doesn't make you dumb. That's not a you're dumb or you're stupid or anything like that. That's just you don't understand because that's not your specialty problem. So you know, it's not a beat you down thing. It's just like you can't really listen to that shit, bro. I know that sucks, but you just can't listen to it. Like, you can't internalize that shit. Like when you hear something like that, like, oh, it's 200%. It's not. I mean, okay, I guess, but it's not 200% off in every country in the world. That's how I would counter that shit. It's not 200% off in every country in the world, bro. That would be like some comic book cabal Batman shit. Like, it's not. That's not gonna happen. So you got to kind of look at the big picture if you can. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, there was another thing too. I actually listened to that clip. That whole clip is actually, or the segment of CNN with Dr. Leanna Wen. I forget that first name, but it was based on an op-ed written by somebody where they were just giving their opinion on saying that we're overcounting COVID deaths. Now, I remember there were, early on certain situations. These were not ubiquitous by any stretch of the imagination, but there were certain situations where certain people, were marked COVID deaths and they had to go back and redo those later and such. But to act as if it's something that's been grossly overdone would be quite crazy, because number one, we know that it's a felony for anyone filling out a death certificate to falsify that. That's a government document, number one. So you risk losing your medical license, prosecution, getting fired, all sorts of things like that. But also, to the point of, when people try to make this thing and saying, well, you died from COVID or died from complications of COVID or died with COVID and they were no, people aren't mixing that up. If you get a gunshot, or you have 3 or 4 gunshot wounds to the chest and 2 to your head, and you pass away because of those injuries, and you happen to test positive for COVID-19, that's not a COVID death. And no one's putting that down as a COVID death and saying, hey, let's put this down for no reason at all because I'm bored today. It's just not reality. Like, people look at it and say, okay, though, it counts as a COVID case for sure. It's definitely a COVID case because someone tested positive, but it's not a COVID death. COVID death would be, or complications from COVID would be, if you're infected and, you're having kidney complications or heart failure, whatever the case, because of, that you would not otherwise not have had you not had a COVID-19 infection. I think people are acting as if they're acting as if these things are interchangeable, or the hospitals are treating these as interchangeable, and they're actually not doing that. So that's it. I'm done talking. I know Aisha got her hand up, so.
I'm just going to comment on the public health aspect of Dr. Leanna Wen. We had our annual meeting late last year, and I just want to make sure that you take what she says with a grain of salt, because half the time she's advocating for policies that she doesn't use herself. So there's a lot of privilege that comes with a lot of these public health speakers that are always platformed on any channel, on any venue, right? You have to take it with a grain of salt, because their children are not going to the same schools that your children are. Their children are not subjected to, poor ventilation, poor filtration, poor masking, poor testing procedures. They also work from home often. If you watch them when they speak on all of these channels, now, yes, you can't go into every studio, but if you've been watching, you'll notice that they're all working from home because they know better than to go out into the public and expose themselves more often. I also want to bring up the fact that we, as members of the American Public Health Association, ended up signing a petition for Dr. Wen not to be the speaker at our conference. And not only did that petition, kind of get into some of the anti-vaxxer, circles and whatnot, like, oh, freedom of speech, et cetera, and so forth. But what it also did was she didn't show up to the conference. It's just, you do deserve to know who it is that you're listening to. And she was fired from her other posts. So take it with a grain of salt. If you want any other information, I have no problem. I'll post it to the Nest if you want me to. That's up to you. But please realize where these people who are speaking to you are coming from. They don't have children in public schools. They don't have family members or generations of families in their homes that may need to, be in a confined space. So if one person gets sick, there's no way to isolate from another person because you have a multi-generational household. There are so many aspects of public health to this pandemic that I hope that our spaces are helping you become more aware of. But again, be really wary. Like, anytime someone on a news broadcast says, oh, well, studies say, right? you should really be looking into which study it is and asking someone who knows how to analyze a study, not someone who pretends to, but people like Dr. Copeland, who does this every day, all day, and the rest of us who really do work with it. It's really important that the right people are analyzing, because all it takes is one little statement that isn't true in any way, shape, or form, and it just brings apart like everything.
Thank you for that, Aisha. Dr. Copeland will be back in a second. I just think it's funny like how a lot of these folks, like they will not listen to the overwhelming consensus of doctors and scientists. But when they do listen to a doctor, it's always someone on the fringes. It's like, it's like you have like 100 doctors telling you one thing, and they'll say, well, have you heard about Dr. Blah, 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 who lives in the southwest of New Zealand? Who, you know what I mean? It's always this really weird thing every single time. It's just confusing to me. Like how your credibility always ends up in this one weird spot.
It's always the demon semen ones, okay?
Yeah.
It's always the demon semen. Anytime a physician says something that you want to agree with, suddenly you're going to believe the physicians. But the physicians that are saying things that you do not agree with, that infringe on your so-called freedoms, all of a sudden, we can't trust you. You're utilizing your, what is it that they always say? What's the phrase exactly? That you're appealing to your authority, you're appealing to your credentials.
Yeah, it's kind of well. But all right, so we can move on to, I think Joshua is next. There's a queue, and then we can go to phases. Dr. Cope will be back in a second. Joshua?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, making sure. Can you hear me? My phone's acting up.
Yeah. You're good.
Yeah, so this was like something too that I noticed. I was kind of more exposed to when I was finishing up my graduate program when the pandemic hit, and I had happened to be in an advanced mathematical modeling course. I'm a mathematician, and I noticed. So our course was like targeted. The school kind of targeted us and pointed us at developing models to help state officials kind of figure out like, okay, what's causing the spread, what different mechanisms are going in, like figuring out like the R naught value and R sub t, the moving one that's hard to predict. And that was kind of my first big exposure when I was working on stuff that was dealt with structured superspreading, which was like you have a group A and group B. One group is isolating, wearing masks, the other is partying, and figuring out like the threshold by which the population B could hurt population A. And when I would post stuff about this on social media or try to talk to people, I was hit so hard with like, oh, those are liberal numbers. That's liberal math. And it was such a disheartening thing because I'm just sitting here trying to, produce models. And that's when as we're talking about, it's an identity. It's become this weird political twist. And it's just like that was in your face all the time. Hey, your math is wrong because you're being misled by, liberal or Democrat data or whatever political faction they didn't like. And it's just this weird, I honestly feel like it comes from this idea that like all opinions are equal. And so if I can shout as loud as you, then my opinion is just as valid. And so just kind of addressing what we're seeing in this is when you are hearing these people talk about these fringe studies and these doctors, there's always this weird undercurrent, this weird identity or political undercurrent of, I guess, trying to be the diligent contrarian. And it just, I don't know, it drove me up the wall. But
no, that's real talk. And I'm glad you mentioned that too, because you'll notice that people, when they're to your point, like they will somehow take things that should have absolutely nothing to do with politics, right? Numbers, you're a mathematician, like the models you create, except they don't care about Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. Like it's just the models, like it's the numbers, and mathematics probably go back centuries, millenniums, maybe that you studied. I can't, comment specifically. I suck at math, but like, or even
you just have bad teachers. I don't blame you.
But even when we start talking about even this, when we're talking about dipping into virology, immunology, biology, microbiology, molecular biology, like things of that nature, like vaccine development, and all of these, somehow when they make their arguments, they will pivot to some sort of political diatribe. And the reason that happens is because, unlike, okay, you amongst your peers, you guys can have these conversations for hours. You don't need to mention anything political. You can just talk about this and that, this, carry this and all that, and the details of the actual mathematics. as opposed to folks who don't have the range to speak on things like your mathematics or microbiology, molecular biology. Like I said, the dogma of mRNA or protein synthesis and that sort of thing. They have to throw in these political and these feeling involved parts of their diatribe. You hear things like Fauci all of a sudden, CNN, the left. Bro, I can have a conversation now, thankfully over the last 2 years because of study and all that. I'm happy to talk about different proteins and protein synthesis and mRNA decay pathways and shoot what a glycoprotein does and parts of immunology, all that. I can talk about that for a while. Have conversations with people. Never once will you ever hear me say Fauci. You'll never hear me say the Democrats. You never hear me say, it's all about the agenda, and my feelings never get involved. All I care about is the science. And when people don't have the range for that, or this is something that's tied to your identity and they don't have the range to it, you get exactly what you had to go through. So, one question, Josh, if I may. You're the first mathematician I've actually spoken to, right? So you're a mathematician, right? If you told somebody, okay, this is another point. If you went out and you told people that 2 + 2 equals 197, right? And you're a mathematician, you say that. Does that automatically make it true, or does the layman person who says no, 2 + 2 is 4, are they telling the truth? How does that work?
I mean, I guess with some weird, funky numbers and metrics, you can make that true. But I mean, I think the main thing that I always see in math is they always think it's an appeal to authority or credential. I think was it Aisha? You were talking about. You said that it was. They think that we have this, because we're titled as a mathematician or we have some advanced degree, that no matter what we say, we think is true. And that's how the scientific community works. And I've been torn down by my own peers pointing out how dumb I am in an equation I messed up than I've ever been with just trying to, I would never go to one of my graduate advisors and be like, well, I know the math is wrong, but I'm saying it's right because I'm a mathematician. This is not how it works. And so scientists, as much as it sucks sometimes, like to be proven wrong, in that it also is one of those moments like, oh, wow, we just learned or we just advanced something forward. So I feel like that, it was someone coming to me and being like, actually, your math is wrong. If I'm wrong, I go, wow, you're absolutely correct. 100%, I made a mistake. It's never the flip, though. We never see that where if I go to someone who's saying something like, the equations that are being used are being skewed. And I'm like, okay, skewed in what way? Are we talking are we doing a normal distribution, a Poisson distribution? There's never that reciprocating, oh, wow, yeah, never mind. You were right. I should change what I'm talking about. It's always one way. And I think that's what disheartens me the most. But this is nice. Seeing these spaces like this come up where people can actually talk and say, no, actually, you guys are the crazy ones. We're the sane ones. So, yeah, I never go with appeal to titles or authority. Whenever I'm teaching, if I'm teaching in a student, I think for my undergraduate, I ran a planetarium and I said something about a planet. I can't remember. I got the temperature wrong. And this little fourth grader, she stood up and she was like, actually, it's this. And I was like, oh my goodness, you're right. I misspoke. You want to run the show. It's never been it's but I never see it the other way. It's always just those of us that I guess are sane and logical that are okay with being corrected or learning new things.
Appreciate it very much, Joshua. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate that. I want to check. So we have Chris, Phases, and Lisa that haven't spoken yet. Chris, did you want to say something, Chris, before we go to Phases?
Which Chris are you talking to?
Chris Comex.
Okay, sorry, just making sure. The only thing I'm mostly just listening to the conversation going on, and I agree with just about everything that's been said by Dr. Copeland, by Drew, Rohan, and Aisha, and everybody else. One thing I was going to add, though, to the data that's been mentioned is that you might see these preliminary and I really kind of I personally dislike how readily accessible some of these preliminary kind of case studies are available to the public, because they're not able the public isn't really able to contextualize or really tell the difference between, say, an observational study versus an actual experiment that is controlled and scientific. So these preliminary case studies, while they can be helpful, especially in the the scientific and academic community, it can cause some problems. And case in point, I tried finding it because I do remember this being brought up on Clubhouse back in 2021 on some of our rooms. Is that I found a paper that was kind of talking vaguely about what I'm referencing, and I'll send it to Rohan. But basically, there were a bunch of people on Clubhouse around September 2021 coming, with these various studies talking about how Israel actually at that time, because they had opened everything up, and were having concerts and everything, because they had one of the highest vaccination rates in the world at that point. But yet they had one of the higher infection rates. And so there were a lot of people coming on saying, "Oh, look at the data from Israel. It shows that they, that clearly the people who get, vaccinated are more likely to get infected." When, the part that's being left out of that is you can't, just because you see a correlation doesn't necessarily imply causation unless you can come up with a valid mechanism. Now, the reason that actually happened was because obviously, Israel had opened up. They were having all kinds of concerts. And if you recall, after the original series here in the United States, and this is kind of, I think, was a mistake, personally on the part of our government, was this incentivization program for the vaccinations, which was, if you get vaccinated, we'll drop the mask restrictions, we will drop social distancing, and of course, businesses even followed through with this and put incentives on their employees to get vaccinated. And they said, if you get vaccinated, we'll you don't have to wear a mask when you come to work, you don't have to social distance, basically, we'll take all the restrictions away. And I think what that did is that encouraged the people who got vaccinated to engage in a lot of reckless behavior. And I think, I know that at least, there was, I think, a tendency back in, I think it was, right after the first vaccination series, you saw those people on social media and everything going on vacations and going, that they were at that first concert that happened, that everybody kind of was, that was packed, that, in 2021, you just saw a whole lot of reckless behavior after that first vaccination series because people thought it was over. And I think, after each booster, there may or may not, and we have to wait and see, but, there may or may not be a causality, being that some of these people who are getting the boosters are just acting more reckless after they get it, which doesn't have any bearing on the effectiveness of the vaccine, but more on, I guess, the incentives that have been put in place by the government and our general social behavior. We don't know that for sure. That's just, a hypothesis, a possible explanation. We have to wait and see, until more data comes out.
Appreciate you, Chris. Thanks so much, bro. And always great to have you here. Phases, are you there?
Hey, Ron. Yeah, I'm here.
What's up? What's going on?
Not much. Thank you guys again for hosting this space. I love hearing the conversations that happen here. I learn a lot, so thanks for taking the time. I DM'd you, Ron, about the study that I'm going to reference. I don't know if you want to link that first before I delve into it.
All right, give me like 30 seconds.
Okay.
Let's see if you don't mind, Phases, I'll just go to Lisa really quickly for 2 minutes, and then I'll come right back to you and I'll post the link, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
I bet. Lisa, is on you.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I have a really, really basic question, but it's been nagging at me since the beginning of the pandemic. My father, who, if he got COVID, quite certain he would die, doesn't want to die, doesn't want to get COVID, and he's a chemical engineer, he's got extremely high IQ, not a doctor, not a biologist, but reads medical journals all the time for his own health conditions. He swears that the masks don't help. And I was over there moving him, and I'm like, everybody walked in there like, I'm like, where's your mask? And my dad said, you don't need one. I'm like, I'd feel better if they wore one. Can somebody please tell me, either you could say go back to high school, or just tell me, what is it with the people, even really smart people? My dad's not a conspiracy guy. He's taking the shots. He just thinks the masks don't work.
I'm gonna say I'm really sorry that, you know, it's hard. It's hard to have parents who don't want to listen or open their minds to some of the data that happens to be there. And I just wanted to say I'm really sorry hearing it, because I can hear, you know, how much it hurts you. So Lisa, the best I can do, and the best I can say from personal experience, is just to, I left a lot of masks for my parents and my family members in places when they were not masking. And, you know, this is like Thanksgiving dinner and stuff. And you have public health people who knew in 2021 that Omicron was coming. So I was stuck at my phone and the only person masked, and everybody else was just vaccinated more or less, and hanging out at Thanksgiving maskless. And I'm just sneaking around and opening doors here and there. And I'm trying to put like a HEPA filter somewhere in the corner. And, you know, I snuck around a lot trying to do these things. And, you know, for a long period of time, I was able to convince my family to mask indoors. And suddenly there comes a point where, you know, President Biden makes this absolutely incorrect claim that the pandemic is like completely over, and everybody and their mother is like, we're done, we're pandemic fatigued, we don't care, we don't want masks anymore, this is doing nothing. So I understand, and I empathize. And the best thing that I've been able to do so far is just not only by modeling the behaviors myself, by being fully masked in higher risk situations and doing the behavior, going outside to eat, or not congregating with everyone, or saying no to, you know, a gathering. I also left a lot of masks around spaces and always carried them with me. And so in the event that I could be like, you know, it seems a little stuffy in here, or there's a lot of people around us, maybe we should wear a mask, and I could like sneak one over and just like leave one, you know, next to them on the counter or something. And it's, you know, it's hard. It's really hard, especially when a lot of people want to say that the masks only filter such and such microns, and the virus is smaller than that. Or
That's
you know,
exactly what he's talking about. What you
and
just
then
said.
you have to respond. Yeah, then you have to respond and say, well, how does the virus travel? Does it travel on its own, or do you have to cough or spit it out? And then if you cough or spit and you transmit the virus through the air, don't you think it has a little, I don't know, maybe spherical bubble of water, a little bit of lipids, something like you just got it doesn't just float around hanging out on its own, otherwise it would degrade, right? So that's probably the best way to do it. Otherwise, there's little things that I've seen with children, that you can put a mask on and try to blow out a candle or a match, and you won't be able to do it.
Yeah, that's
Thank you. I appreciate you taking my very basic question.
No, definitely, Lisa. Thank you for asking that, because I find out a lot of really smart people have fallen into that same trap, because they're smart in other areas, but like intelligence and smartness, it doesn't necessarily translate over to every other facet of life, right? Like I'm extremely intelligent when it comes to writing, speaking, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I just know what I'm good at. You know, but that doesn't make me like we mentioned earlier. I'm not a mathematician. I have no hope. I can't say I have no hope, but I just, you know, I'm not on that level, right? It doesn't come naturally to me. science, when I put in effort, comes somewhat easy to me. But there are other things in life where I put in effort. I'm like, man, this is just not, it's not hitting right. And so, I think that when people use that, I try to break it down even, simple, like, look, okay, you and I can fit through a doorway, right? But if I get into a car, an SUV, that SUV is probably not going to be able to fit through that doorway. It's the same thing with I should have used that in the video, but it's the same thing with the virus, right? The virus, if I can make the analogy that I would necessarily be, you and I in a car, would be the actual virus, right? So we could fit through whatever pour that doorway. However, if we're in a Lamborghini Urus, which is a Lambo truck, that's not going to fit through a doorway. And so the mask I don't have to stop you. Like roadblocks, police roadblocks don't have to stop you. They have to stop your vehicle. That's what a mask has to do. It's just to stop the vehicle for the virus. And so when I said that, these viruses catch rides on little water droplets and aerosols like Uber, I literally that's yeah. So yeah, but that's it. That's how it works. But I appreciate that.
Appreciate you, Drew. All right, so let's get back to, and appreciate you, Aisha, and thanks for your question, Lisa. Let's get back to phases. I posted the link to the top of the room, and you can speak to it.
All right, cool. Thank you. So basically, from my viewpoint, I think taking the COVID-19 vaccine should be based on an individual risk-benefit analysis. So, for example, in the case of children, people are asking themselves, do the vaccines reduce the already near zero, longer-term myocarditis risk from COVID-19 infection enough to compensate for the risk of myocarditis that vaccines add? So, I provided an example of a medical study that establishes for young teen males, taking the vaccine carries more risk than benefit, especially if they get a second dose. And I also
I'm sorry, where's that? I'm sorry, is it in Nets? Where is that? I'm trying to find it so I can read it. Sorry.
It said, are you looking directly at the study?
Wait, hold on.
No, I'm looking at the Nets.
It's the second. Yeah, because mine is the first one. If you swipe over one, it hurts.
Anisha.
Anish Coca posted it.
Got it. Okay, no, I'm here to study. It's coming up right now. Yeah, so I'm here to study. I just clicked on it. I'm trying to get it to download. Give me 1 second. Doesn't want to download. I don't know why.
It's an Allison Krug and Tracy Hoeg study, so we already know the validity of it.
Well, it's not about validity. It's about the detail. It's not about validity. The validity of it. Oh, hold on 1 second. I got a phone call. 1 second.
Okay. No, I just wanted to know, to jump off on her comment, what should I know anything about Allison Krug and Josh Stevenson? Do they have any biases?
Yes, you should always check the authors and where they come from and what their actual clinical and academic publications are in, to see whether or not they've changed their lanes. You know how people always tell you to stay in your lane? There are certain lanes that should not be crossed over, like an economist should not be commenting on medicine kind of thing. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's always really good, especially when you see a study. Now, I know that Dr. Copeland's reading through it, but when you see a study that's being authored by certain authors, they tend to get retracted more often. So there's also a retraction watch Twitter that tells you about studies that have been taken back simply because they came to the wrong conclusions or didn't use enough data or misrepresented their data and things like that. And it happens on, whichever side of the, if you have 2 sides, 3 sides, 5 sides, whatever you believe in, it'll happen all over. And if science works correctly, and we're able to have our checks and balances like we should, you'll see that, certain studies that get really, really prominent or are passed around a lot have some aspects that are really wrong, and they get retracted. But unfortunately, like someone had said earlier, the damage is always done quickly. And in order to fix that damage and repair what's already been placed into someone's head and primed for them, it takes longer to do that than the original misinformation or disinformation.
I just realized I was on stage with Anisha. I remember this guy. Yeah, so I'm gonna get Dr. Copeland some time to go over that study. Dr. Chris, I see you got your hand up.
Oh yeah, thanks, Drew. So the other thing I was going to talk about is, and this has kind of come to light as this is another, to my point earlier about just the ready access to all kinds of the academic literature on this. So there are these particular types of journals. Well, there's two types of journals I'm just going to briefly mention. The first one is called a preprint, and if you ever see a journal that says RXIV, that indicates it's a preprint. That means that it's not peer reviewed. This is kind of a new. This is a new kind of feature in the academic literature that was initially intended to make peer review transparent and feedback from the community before it actually got published in a real journal. The problem, as we've seen during COVID-19, is that people have used these preprint journals essentially to just get whatever crap, whether it's basically an observational study or I think there were a few that were published, I think way back on ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine or what have you, they were published in I say published, they were posted on preprints and therefore readily accessible to the public. And then they were being cited, as if they were legitimate peer reviewed articles. But of course the public didn't really know the difference, and they can't. Most public still doesn't know the difference between the two, but they're not peer reviewed. They're just there basically to get feedback from the academic and scientific community. And yeah, that's what they're there for. And so they haven't been vetted. And a lot of the public didn't know that. And what kind of also irritated me is I even saw some actual academics, tweeting or sharing, these preprints as if they were legit data. Now, in some cases, you can kind of vet the methods. As scientists, we can vet the methods ourselves. Looking through the article, but then the issue with that is that there are some academics that were clearly had bad motives behind that. Now, the second journal is that they're what we call pay-to-play journals, and these journals are typically, some people call them "quote unquote" predatory journals, but basically they're a scam. Basically, they're you pay a certain fee amount of money to basically get whatever crap article that you wrote published for a ridiculous amount of money, and then you get some sort of benefit from the journal after you get published. But there's a list. If you just Google predatory journals, there's a whole list of predatory journals out there. And there have been a few that, thankfully, I think the academic community has been quick to kind of identify them. The press has kind of done a good job to not amplify them. But on social media circles, especially, there appears to be, some circulation of these articles posted in predatory journals. Now, the last thing I'll say before I land my plane is that you have to be careful, and this is a mistake that even some seasoned academics make, is that there are some journal, there are some paper authors who have a tendency to cite each other, and they will only cite each other. They won't cite anybody else. And it's kind of this, this feedback loop. And this especially is applicable to the FLCC people who basically, you look at all their citations and they're just citing each other, even though they're all part of the same organization that are spewing the same BS. They're basically only citing each other. They're not citing anybody else. And it becomes this feedback loop, and basically just to amplify your friends, specifically in the field, which is very, very frowned upon as in the science community in general. And I'll line my plane there.
You made some great points. Thank you for your perspective. In this case, I guess the only reason why I was giving credence to these studies is that like once these data sets were released, there were multiple countries that paused the use of the Moderna vaccine specifically for young men. So that's why I feel like there's some veracity to those claims.
Did you, Dr. Copeland, did you get a chance to look at the study? Copeland may be on the phone, but something that you missed before you got here, Phases. Well, I'm not sure if you were here or not, but we were talking about the severity of myocarditis that you may get from the vaccine versus the severity of myocarditis that you may get from the virus. And we were talking about the differences. And we had a cardiologist on stage on CIAB, a really awesome guy. He has a really cool TikTok as well. And he was talking about the differences where myocarditis that you get from the vaccine, for all the data that we have, seems to be self-limiting and mild. Like we can't find a case of some person that has died from myocarditis from the vaccine. But myocarditis from the virus is a completely different thing, where people are dying, people are getting heart transplants, and so like a whole host of issues. So I don't even think that a study that just compares the number of cases speaks to the actual impact of what we're looking at. So, but I was hoping that Copeland would be back. He's still on the phone. So
Rohan, so if I'm reading, I don't know
the
right study. Is this the BNT162b2 vaccine-associated myopericarditis in adolescents? The authors are Krug, Stevenson, and Hogue.
Yep, exactly.
That's the one.
So I can only see the abstract. I don't know what is going on with my institutional access. I'm not able to see the full text, but I can tell you right now the methodology is highly flawed because it is using VAERS data, which again, we know these three authors are not authors who work for the CDC. And why is that important? Again, I mean, we've said this till we're blue in the face, and it doesn't seem to stick, but VAERS is unverified data. Literally anybody can report anything to VAERS. I will, as soon as I finish landing my plane, I will post a link describing a case of a guy who, to prove a point, posted that after getting, I keep saying it's the flu vaccine. It wasn't the flu vaccine. It was some other vaccine. It might have been shingles vaccine. I don't remember which one. He claimed that his skin turned green. He grew massive muscles, busted out of his clothes, and had rage issues. He literally said he turned into the Hulk after getting a vaccine. And he did this to prove a point. You can't find that in VAERS anymore, and the CDC has confirmed this because the CDC looked at that and they were like, well, this obviously makes no sense. They contacted the guy, and he was like, yeah, I just did this to prove a point because I got into an argument at a town council meeting when someone was claiming that VAERS is verified data, and to prove a point, I posted this thing. And they were like, well, that's nice and all, but do you think we can remove this from here because it's stupid? And he said he agreed to allow them to remove that case. But the CDC has confirmed that that case was reported to VAERS. So my point is this, you can report anything. So if I go get a vaccine and then I run across the street and get hit by a car, and someone decides to report that I died after vaccination, that will end up in VAERS. That doesn't tell me that the cause of my death is the vaccine. It just says I died after getting the vaccine. Then what has to happen is what's happening right now with the VSD program and the CDC, which also was misrepresented, right? The stroke issue. So when a signal is reached, and that is a predetermined spike, meaning a certain number of cases, it's a whole statistical thing that they come up with. Once that occurs and a signal is found, then they do a drill down, right? So then that means they look at all the cases individually, they call the doctors, they get medical records, and then they make a determination, is this real or not? And is this truly caused by the vaccine, yes or no? That is how you determine whether or not the vaccine has actually caused myocarditis. And we know that the vaccine can do it because when that process is followed properly, we can actually see rates of myocarditis in young people. However, those rates, as we've said before multiple times, incredibly low. The cases are very mild. They're often treated as an outpatient with over-the-counter medications like ibuprofen and Advil and rest, right? And to the conclusion that this paper makes is not at all evident from what they're doing based on the data that they're showing. All they can do is say, yeah, we downloaded data from VAERS and this is what it shows. You can't make a conclusion from that. And yet what they've decided to do is make this whole conclusion that says that the risks for teenagers outweighs the benefits because of these numbers. And you cannot make that decision. They haven't compared apples to apples. They have compared oranges in a bag in the grocery store to an apple that you've peeled and confirmed is an apple.
Thank you for that, Dr. Priya. I'm gonna just read from VAERS real quickly because I'm glad you saw it, Dr. Priya. I didn't even see that. But this is from the VAERS website, and this is, you know, because it's a repeating claim that we get so often. It seems like it's been 2 years and we get the same claims about VAERS. But from the VAERS website, it says, when evaluating data from VAERS, it's important to note that for any reported event, no cause. Hold on, I gotta mute somebody real quick. Let me start over. It says from VAERS website, when evaluating data from VAERS, it's important to note that for any reported event, no cause and effect relationship has been established. The report of an adverse event to VAERS is not documentation that the vaccine caused the event. A report to VAERS generally does not prove that the identified vaccine caused the adverse event described. VAERS accepts all reports, like Dr. Priya just said, without judging whether the event was caused by the vaccine or not. So I think that's very important. So thank you for saying that. That's great.
You know, I'm looking at this Twitter thread, and it's even more insidious than that. So when you look at the thread and scroll down a little further, there's a section in there that says, in addition, a cardiologist reviewed all cases to adjudicate diagnoses, and all case data publicly reported here. But then when you click on that here, which of course nobody is ever really going to do, right? It's just a series of graphs, right? And none of this actually says anything about causality. I mean, so for example, the first graph is my own pericarditis by days post-vaccination. That's not the only thing that you have to look at when you look at causality, right? Then they have one that is myocarditis and troponin levels. Well, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. If you have myocarditis, you would expect to see a troponin rise. Otherwise, it wouldn't be myocarditis. Same with pericarditis. So it's a little bit of, hey, let me put this data out there to lay people who wouldn't have the medical backgrounds to know the magic tricks that I'm doing. And they're just going to see it as wizardry, and they're not going to see it for the illusion that it is. Again, nobody is saying that myocarditis does not occur at slightly higher rates in young men. And when I say young men, I mean teens to about 30s to 40s. But that rate is blown out of the water by the rate of myocarditis in all age groups when it comes to COVID and when it comes to severity. Now, you know, earlier the speaker said, I believe that the vaccine should be given based on a risk-benefit analysis individually. Literally everybody who is pro-vaccine believes that. There isn't a single self-respected doctor who would ever say as a blanket statement that vaccines should be given to everybody, full stop. That's not ever how we do anything. In the 20 years that I have been a physician, I have never once recommended a vaccine just because it exists. It is always about risk versus benefit. However, in this case, the benefit still outweighs the risk. If you choose not to do that, that is up to you. If you choose to speak to your doctor and you still don't trust them and you don't believe them and you don't want to do that, that is up to you. But that is not based in what the population data shows.
Yeah, I just want to say the guy that shared that I remember being in the spaces with him, and yeah, he's calculated. I'm not trying to get into all that. That's wild. Hey, Josh, you got your hand up. I'm sorry, man. You can go ahead. It's my brother's name too. Go ahead.
Thank you. No, I was kind of speaking to both points. Like all these points I was going to make a point on that, but yeah, you all nailed that. What I was going to say too, and just from the mathematics with all the data and the graphs, like I think there's a funny saying we have with like 30 parameters in an equation, you can fit an elephant to anything. And so what you'll see is you'll have these correlations that she was talking about, where whenever I would submit an equation or want to do anything like that, I would always have to justify how I set up my equation and the parameters, the things that you can tweak and make the line go up and down. And if you have no justification and no statistical backing for that, then it's tossed, because it's just, I can make a line, I can make a graph, say anything I want. So there, in these real studies, when you actually go through the journal process, like Chris was talking about, and you get these actual peer reviews, and you're not paying to play, there are actual peers that will go through and check these parameters, and they'll run them, and they'll say, hey, like, no, you've got this p-value, something, just some number that doesn't make any sense here. You're, p hacking. But, and then, so that's something I always have to worry out for. When someone will share stuff on social media, it looks very mathy. They are the ones actually appealing to credentials. They're the ones appealing to the whole scientific, the dogma behind it versus actually understanding what they're doing. So they're kind of taking what they blame you for and using it. It's weird. And then also to the point where you were talking about how vaccines on an individual basis. And yes, obviously in a free society, you want to ensure that the person has all the information to make the choice for themselves. But what I always like to talk to people when they use that is, this also is more than just about you directly. I wear a mask when I go into high risk areas, not so much for my protection, but to protect people from me. I have a seatbelt on my loved ones in the car, not necessarily because I think I'm going to hit anybody. It's because we might get hit. And I always try to, this whole risk analysis thing that people just fail to understand is, it's not, we do live in a connected society. And I'm sorry I'm harping on that. This is what my math and models were doing for, but you can absolutely hurt somebody next to you without intending to do so. So a part of your calculation for yourself that you have to do when you're thinking about vaccines for your family, for your loved one, for anyone, for any of your friends, is who could I hurt or whose life could I change by me making a decision based on, erroneous claims or something that I'm not familiar with. So it's just something to, I guess, keep in your head when we're talking about, is the risk worth getting obviously I would get the vaccine over COVID any day, 100%. But you always have to consider other people around you that you're interacting with that you could end up hurting or killing. So that's.
All right, appreciate that, Joshua. Thank you so much, bro.
Sorry, can I just say one last thing very quickly? So, just we talk about the risk of myocarditis. I just want to point out that last year 7% of lung transplants were performed because of COVID. We don't do lung transplants in very old people who are very, very, very sick. We do lung transplants in young people who can tolerate the surgery and who will live long enough with the lung transplant to have a survival benefit, but who are largely healthy in every other way. For example, we don't do lung transplants in people who have kidney failure and liver failure and heart failure and all of these things. So my point is this: when you get vaccinated as a young man, and my nephew is about to turn 18, he has had all 3 of his shots. Actually, sorry, he's had 4 because he's had his bivalent now. And was I a little bit nervous knowing there's an increased risk? Yes. Was I more nervous about the other stuff that we see that happens to kids? Absolutely. Because the rate of myocarditis and the severity of myocarditis in kids cannot compare to being in the hospital. And the challenge with COVID is we cannot predict who is going to end up in the hospital. Healthy kids end up in the hospital with COVID all the time.
Usually due to vitamin deficiencies.
If I could just speak to
not at all due to vitamin deficiencies. Not at all.
Almost entirely.
With Ellie, still mute. Phases take 60 more seconds to land, and then we'll go to Ellie.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what they're both saying. I agree, but even still, like the other day, there was a father, and I think his name is Nelson Ipegas, in his Twitter space. His son had.
Phases, sorry. We try to avoid stories of any type in this room. So if you got anything about any particular claims with a study,
well, other people in the space were in that space. Dr. Copeland was in that space. Drew was in that space.
I know, but just not like, if you can move on to something else, just know, like, testimonial type things. If that's not where you were going, then that's fine. But we stay away from that in this room. Nothing that you can't prove.
Okay, well, she just said her nephew had gotten, 4 doses of the vaccine. So I thought that was an anecdote, but okay.
No, it was, the point of that story was not to prove anything other than I understand why someone might be nervous about it. That was the point of the story. It wasn't that he's fine. I mean, he is fine, but that wasn't the point of the story.
Yeah, plus we also can't determine that father, that the Pfizer vaccine is the reason for his son's death. He said he died 33 days later, and we don't know his son's medical records. It's a lot of different variables that go into that. And unfortunately, even before this, and Dr. Pri has been in medicine for 20 years and such, children die for a number of different things, and including, unfortunately, and I don't speak too deeply into this. I've never cared for a patient, but you can look at it, cardiovascular issues as well. So it is something that does happen, sadly, and this has been happening before COVID. So we don't really know what.
Has there been like a large spike since
Ellie. So real quick, I want to get you in, but Drew, let Drew land his plane, and then we'll come to you next, bro.
Yeah, I'll land with that. Like I said, we just don't know. Like, people have been dying. Matter of fact, there's a friend of mine on here. He is Dr. Canuck. He's a Canadian doctor. He is actually sharing charts about how the leading causes of death from 2016 was actually cardiovascular diseases, and then now if you flash forward to 2022, leading cause of death was actually, let's see here. Give me 1 second. Let me put this thing here. It's amazing how that actually works. And so we've been having issues with these things for a while. Wow, he actually has a great chart here where he's actually kind of trolling the people who want to blame everything on the vaccine, when in 2016, we were having a whole bunch of things that were causing people to have sudden cardiac death as well. So anyway, I'm done talking about that. I'm going to go ahead and land. If it's okay, we can let Ellie speak.
All right, so thank you, Drew. So real quick, Ellie, before you go, just as a quick reset to the room. So this room is called Bring the Facts. It's a club that we run. We've done probably, I don't know, maybe like 500 rooms. We've done two years of rooms, right? The reason it's called Bring the Facts is we require you to provide evidence for claims that you make. So once a claim is made, be prepared to share a link to a reputable source to support your contentions, and present exactly where in the source your position is supported. That's like rule number one. So it's easy to just come off mic and just blah, 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 vitamin D, blah, blah. You're going to have to prove it. You're going to have to prove it. So I'm going to be...
Gotcha. Could I start by asking if everyone here already agrees whether or not the COVID death attributed to, let's just say, a portion of the average U.S. yearly death rate? Is that like a statistic everyone here agrees with, or do they have to see that?
Well, you're saying that, do we believe that COVID contributed to the death rate over the last couple of years? I think everybody in this room would agree with that.
A portion of the average yearly death rate. Like 3 million Americans die a year, and COVID contributed to a portion of that. This is just a prefix to what I'm about to say. I just want to see if everyone agrees.
Well, it would actually be 1 million plus, so it would be over that. So, like, typically what would happen is in the world pre-COVID, we did have, average death rates and stuff. You see whatever million numbers is. I have to look that up to see the specific.
It was like
the issue with COVID is it increased that, because on top of what we were normally dealing with, we also had this novel virus that killed 1 million people plus in America. So it would contribute more, actually, unfortunately, to what we were already seeing.
Here's a great question, which is, how much more do you think that COVID death rate contributed to it? Did it multiply by like 10 times? Or was it maybe like just a small portion of what the average yearly death rate already is in America?
I don't know. I haven't done the math, but I would say on the low end, at least it added 1 million people on the low end.
Okay.
To that.
And so when on average, like for instance, prior to 2020, and I guess I'll show these receipts in a second, but I promise you this is legit. Prior to 2020, in 2019, the U.S. yearly death rate was about 2.8 million, and then in 2020, towards the end of 2020, so 2021, these past couple of years, it's been going up still. If you look at the chart, it's been going up for the past like 15 years, but the average right now is about 3 million. So you mentioned like 1 million deaths for COVID. So I'm just trying to say that's like a portion of what's like average. So that's the prefix to what I'm about to say now, which is, so given that COVID contributes to that portion of what we're already used to every year, does it make sense for us to want to vaccinate every single American every year for every coronavirus that only contributes to that small portion of what we're already dealing with every year?
Bro, this is nonsensical.
What the hell? I'm sorry. your
This is
suggestion.
the same guy.
What,
This
yeah,
is the
no,
same
I mean,
guy,
Ellie
right,
doesn't
that came
learn.
up-
Ellie comes in the rooms all the time. But let me
It's
just ask you
fine.
something. Is it your impression that me as a physician, that my job is, yeah, whatever, it's just a few deaths, that doesn't make sense to vaccinate people? Like, is your thought process that the entire field of medicine is not looking to protect people in preventative manners through vaccination? Like, what you're asking effectively is, does it make sense to vaccinate people when only some people died from it? That's effectively what you're asking.
Okay, so now here's where we have
So
to.
only some people die of cancer. Does it make sense for us to have smoking cessation? Only some people die from cardiovascular disease. Should we not be trying to reduce rates of that? Like, what is your point?
Yeah, here, my point is, it comes down to like an accurate perspective on what all the different death rates are that contribute to our yearly death rate. Hang with me for 1 second. So for instance.
Oh, no. Now I understand where the flaw in your logic is. That's not how humans with empathy or medicine is judged.
So just to clarify,
we don't judge whether something is a worthy decision or not based on what the average layperson thinks is an acceptable death rate for people. What we do is we say, hey, you know what? Here's something that is very low risk, that has a very, very good side effect profile, right? The vast majority of side effects are local or systemic reactogenicity, which happen in the first 7 days and are very well tolerated. Yes, there are some people that have more severe side effects, but the rates of those compared to keeping people out of the hospital and keeping them from dying is a no-brainer. That is how we judge whether or not a vaccine should be done.
Except
right. So you fundamentally do not understand preventative medicine.
2
That's
points.
probably the problem here.
I hear you. I do hear you. 2 points, if I could say it, Rohan.
Go ahead, Ellie.
One was the first one, which was what's it called? When you're talking about wanting to vaccinate everyone yearly, it's not just like a one-time thing. And then the second thing was, I got cut off. We can go on, Rohan.
What is your obsession with the yearly thing? I do not understand. You object to all vaccines that are yearly?
Yeah, the ones that are like mandatory to like operate freely, where you have to take it to be safe.
I don't understand. What do you mean you have to take it to be safe? Nobody is forcing you to take it. Nobody has tied anybody. I can't even get into the mandates, dude. Like, that is such a dumb argument to make. So let's focus on the medicine.
Okay.
Why do we give people flu shots?
Because they work, but they're not mandatory every year, so it's something different.
Why, okay, but that, again, we're not talking about mandatory. Why do we give? So when you say they work, what does that mean? What do you mean by they work?
They prevent you from getting us sick, so they work.
Okay, so they do 2 things. That's not completely correct. They reduce the chances you will get it at all, and they reduce the chance that if you get it, you'll have a severe case. It shortens the duration and severity in most people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a worthy preventative measure?
Yeah, so should everyone take that every single year so we're always up to date with it?
Yes.
The flu shot? Yes.
And the COVID shot and every other coronavirus that contributes to a small portion of the deaths, because we do have to look at it from like common sense. Like,
Are you okay? So you believe it's your belief that SARS-2 is just like every other coronavirus? That's your belief?
No, I'm saying that's in a wrong.
That is what you're saying, though, because you're saying like every other coronavirus. It is not like every other coronavirus. Can you acknowledge that?
I could say it better.
Can you acknowledge that it's not like every other coronavirus?
No, it's not. But isn't it constantly changing? And now these are all weaker variants.
How is it different? How is it different? What are some key differences between this coronavirus and like the coronavirus that causes the common cold?
I'm talking about it's constantly changing now. Like the original COVID-19 is gone, right?
Just answer my question first, because I'm trying to take you to a point. You have a tendency to focus on weird things that are not how we make decisions in public health. So let's focus on the things that would help us determine how we make public health decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So how is this coronavirus different than the average coronavirus that just causes the common cold?
This one mutates faster, and apparently we need a booster for every single different.
No, that's not the key point. So I can't tell if you're being deliberately obtuse or if you genuinely don't know this. So I'm going to assume the former, even though I actually believe it's the latter. So why the reason that, sorry, I said that backwards. I actually believe you're being deliberately obtuse, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt for a second. So the reason that this coronavirus is different than the average coronavirus that causes the common cold is if you catch a cold, I mean, first of all, we don't even know if it's coronavirus, right? It could be enterovirus, it could be rhinovirus, it could be any number of things. But none of those viruses, with the exception of RSV in young people and in very old people, causes long-term problems, right? If I catch a coronavirus and just get the common cold from it, I do not have to worry about developing diabetes or dementia. I do not have to worry about vascular complications, neurological complications, brain fog, long COVID. The common cold does not have a rate of between 20 and 25% of people with long COVID. That doesn't exist for the common cold. So when you are talking about a disease that has severe consequences and a vaccine exists that reduces your risk of those severe consequences by doing two things. The primary thing it does is that it prevents you from ending up in the hospital with severe illness that you may or may not survive, right? And if you do survive, you're going to be disabled. But it also helps reduce the chance of transmission. Not so much with Omicron, but it still does. And the reason it does is because it reduces your viral load quicker. In reducing your viral load quicker, it also reduces your chance of developing long COVID. Furthermore, studies have also shown that vaccinated people, when they do get SARS-CoV-2 infections, have lower risk of developing complications like blood clots, stroke, myocarditis. So again, I'm asking you, what is your concern with a vaccine that has been shown to be safe and effective, reducing the risk of everything I just mentioned, for a virus that is a novel virus that is unlike any virus we have ever seen in history?
I hear you. Because it only provides temporary vaccine-induced immunity that we're gonna have to take every single year to continue that protection that you just cited.
That's not a concern. Okay, so I'm asking you, what is your concern? Because something is a fact is not a concern. What is your concern with a yearly vaccine?
Oh, so that's like a problem when we're trying to vaccinate everyone at once, because we do have to go back to a bigger question of how many people is actually impacting at a full
You still have
population.
not answered the question. What is your concern?
The concern is that it's yearly. The concern is that there's a centralized database keeping track of everyone.
Oh my God, can someone help me reword this question so that he actually answers it?
It's not gonna work. That's a prayer.
Wait.
Like, do you understand my question, Rohan?
I'm listening.
Yeah, like.
Oh, let me ask you this
what
way.
is so
What
scary
is the
about
downside? What is the downside of a yearly vaccine?
The fact that it's mandatory for everyone to live freely, have a bank
That is
account, travel.
that is not a downside of a vaccine. You're confusing policy with what I'm asking you. What is the downside of a yearly vaccine? Are you saying it's unsafe? Are you saying it increases risk of something? What is the downside?
Like we're talking science, not like politics, Ellie. And you already said that you like the flu vaccine, which is a yearly vaccine.
But it's not mandatory. But if I could just say,
I mean, it is for healthcare workers, but okay.
The downside, it really is. The downside is that it's going to be required to be yearly. That's the downside.
We don't know that yet. Now, here's the thing, and people keep saying that, and I like in a world, like in a way, I can kind of see that, but that hasn't been like outwardly stated. Then no doubt to prove it. Like okay, if we get to a point where this thing is more endemic, and I would, man, look, that's probably a best case scenario at this point. Then yeah, I can see a point. But even with that, it's still, we already do the same thing for the flu. As a matter of fact, it's a brand new vaccine.
Again, I feel like this argument is nonsensical because, again, As Drew said, we don't know that it's going to be yearly. Is it likely? Yeah, it's likely.
Okay.
There's nobody forcing, let me finish my
Go ahead,
sentence. There's nobody forcing you to get a vaccine at all. Although, to your point about the flu shots, in healthcare, flu shots are mandatory. They didn't used to be. It used to be you could get a flu shot, and if you didn't get a flu shot, then you had to wear, like, you used to put a little sticker on your badge that said that you gotten the flu shot, so that if anybody saw your badge and it didn't have a sticker, they could ask you, why aren't you wearing a mask, and things like that. Let me ask you another question about the difference between coronavirus and flu now. Are there differences in SARS-2 and influenza A and B? In clinical presentation, in incubation periods, things like that, that would have real world consequences for public health?
I heard that question. I did want to go back to when you were just talking about the mandates, but I just wanted to respond to that real quick.
Wait, before you do that, is there a difference between influenza A and B and SARS-CoV-2 from a virology standpoint?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not even asking from a virology standpoint. I'm just asking from a clinical presentation standpoint. So I'll give you specific examples. Two people go to two separate parties. One of them picks up influenza A, one of them picks up SARS-2. What is the likely difference in their presentations?
SARS-2 is going to be worse?
No.
No, she's asking what kind of symptoms are you going to see?
No, I mean, I'm not even asking that. What I'm trying to make the point of is when someone gets influenza, if they're exposed to the influenza A or B, they get sick very quickly. It doesn't have a long incubation period. Nobody's an asymptomatic carrier of influenza, right? So people are visibly ill. When someone is visibly ill, one of the reasons that influenza does not spread like SARS-2 is because when someone is visibly ill, they stay home. It knocks you on your ass, right? If you're visibly ill, people are avoiding you. I mean, that's not always 100%. I've had patients get sick from nurses who did not wear masks when they were visibly ill and they should have been. And this is why in healthcare now it is mandatory that everybody gets vaccinated. But with SARS-2, that person could go to a party, hang out for 2 full weeks and have no symptoms whatsoever and infect a bunch of people, right? The R-naughts are totally different. How they present are totally different. So it's just very weird to me that something like influenza does not concern you being a yearly vaccine, which, as I said, is mandatory for healthcare workers. But SARS-2 isn't. I mean, I get that you have this weird obsession with being forced to do things. Nobody's forcing you to do anything, man. If you don't want to get the vaccine, don't get the vaccine.
I'm just gonna update one. I'm just gonna update one thing: is that the wild type, the original SARS-2 that took us by storm in 2020. Yes, you had a 2 to 5 to 14-day period where you could have been asymptomatic and still spreading the virus. Now we've gotten to a variation of Omicron, a variant, my apologies, it's late here, a variant of Omicron, and it's now like 2 to 3 days before you actually see symptoms. So the incubation period has changed with the variants, but the lesson is still the same. The fact that the flu will present to you really quickly and you'll know to avoid a person because they're sick, as opposed to not having symptoms with COVID, and you won't know whether or not you're supposed to stay away from this person until it's too late and you've already caught a very highly transmissible strain of the virus.
Appreciate it, Aisha. So we're going to soon wind down. I want to get through the last few speakers on stage. So if we can keep responses a little spiffier. So Dave, you're next. I'll give you like 2 minutes if possible.
Oh, don't worry, man. I'm going to be really, really quick. I had something planned to say, and boy, that was a lot, that last conversation. So first of all, I don't have any challenges for you guys. Everything that you've been talking about, I agree with 100%. I was infected in the first wave and I'm disabled. I have long COVID. And so I heard the doctor bringing that up. And in the context of the vaccines, something's become very clear over the last 3 years. Now, I've followed the science with working groups, with science groups. I communicate with doctors on the daily, and we're very well aware of the concept of risk versus reward and why people choose to be vaccinated. I'm 4 times vaccinated myself. My question is, and I would love to hear the doctor's thoughts on this, for an understudied patient population, like the group that I'm part of, these people who are struggling neurologically with cardiovascular symptoms and autonomic problems, who respond extremely poorly to the vaccine. And we're talking, when I take the vax, I don't walk for 3 to 4 months. I lose my ability. I mean, it's pretty brutal, man. But I know the consequences of a SARS infection, and so I make a personal decision based on, the risk versus the benefit. But as a clinician, how do you deal with this understudied population? Because this is a conversation that's been very challenging to have with the current political, mood. And it's something that I feel needs to be discussed. These are people who want to be vaccinated. They want to be protected, but we have no real evidence or no real studies that are showing that we're any less or more safe taking the vaccine. So if you have something to say or you want to discuss it, I'd love to hear. And thank you very much, guys.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question. The question is, and to clarify something, when you say when you get the vaccine, you have a poor response, you're not referencing a poor immune response. You're referencing a poor reaction.
No, I have no doubt that, I've had my antibodies checked. They're through the roof. There's no doubt in my mind that the vaccine itself is a better alternative than getting infected. I had 1 infection back in March of 2020, and I've lost 3 years of my life.
Oh, no.
So there's no question there.
I'm
What
just
I'm
trying to
saying is
clarify. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just trying to clarify
No
because,
problem.
when I hear the word response, I think immune response, but that's not what you're saying. You're saying reaction. You're saying
I'm saying, yeah, from a public health standpoint, or just a clinician, in clinic with patient, when you have a patient who maybe has this condition and you're not sure how well they're going to respond to the vaccine, what approach do you take? My doctor, I'll give you an example.
So again, can you
Go ahead.
clarify? Sorry, again, when you say you're not sure how they're going to respond, you mean you're not sure how they're going to react. You're not sure if they're going to have a flare of their symptoms. You're not asking me.
I'm not talking about immune response.
Okay.
I'm talking about the negative possible side effects.
Right. So the reaction.
Yeah.
The reaction. Okay.
Yes.
So
You're
yeah.
correct.
So there's a couple things you have to think about here. So one of them is there, and you're right. So there are challenges to the clinical trials. First of all, to design the clinical trial, you have to know who to enroll. And the problem is that the symptoms of long COVID are vague. They're not fully characterized yet. And until we get, sort of like we do with lupus, major and minor criteria, et cetera, it's going to be very challenging to create a nice, elegant study that can clearly say, yup, these were definitely people that had long COVID, that didn't have an alternative diagnosis, and therefore we know the data is clean, right? That's one of the challenges of doing a trial. That doesn't help you as an individual, but I'm just saying on a population level, that's one of the challenges with doing a trial. But
Yeah,
when it comes to, sorry, I was just going to say, when it comes to what you're asking about someone who might react very poorly and be debilitated for quite some time, we actually have a friend, if you guys know Anna Lee in Clubhouse, who had this happen to her. She got vaccinated, then she got COVID, she got long COVID, she tried to get a booster, and she reacted very poorly to the booster. And it exacerbated her symptoms for months and months and months. So in that situation, for someone with long COVID, I don't treat long COVID personally. I'm a pulmonologist. So, and we don't even really have a great specialist group, right? Long COVID is going to be a disease that is going to need something that's multidisciplinary, right?
Right.
But
This is a mess. It's just, the question is, how do you make an informed decision?
so this is what I
when you
would
don't-
typically tell a patient. I would tell them, we have to talk to every doctor. I would talk to all the doctors that are involved in this person's care. And I would say, what are your thoughts on this? Because I don't know that I would necessarily recommend a vaccine to somebody who already has been vaccinated. So we know they've got some T-cell immunity, right? They've had COVID. So we know they had a little bit of hybrid immunity, right? Depending on where they are, I might just follow their antibody levels. I might send them for a T-spot to see what their T-cell immunity looks like. Evusheld, yes, no, now. I haven't looked at it recently. I don't know if it's been polled. I think it has been polled. But if there were monoclonals available that were prophylactic, I might offer that instead. But the other thing that I would emphasize are other public health measures, right? So that person is someone who more than anybody else needs to be masking and all that other stuff for exactly the reason you said, because as much as you might react badly to the vaccine, how would you react to a second infection?
Right. So that's where the decision with my doctor
10 more
came from.
seconds,
Sorry.
Dave. 10
Okay.
more seconds.
Yep.
gotta
It
move
was
on.
based. Yeah, it's fine. You guys are great. I appreciate it.
All right. No. If you want to say, make your last point.
No, it's fine. I understand. Look, this is a challenging subject, and there is no data, and that's what the doctor. I think she understands that, and I appreciate her answer.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you for being here. So let's go to Seeker, and then we're almost through the queue.
Yeah, I think, man, I think Seeker's gonna be good, man. I got a good feeling about you, Seeker. Don't disappoint me, man. I got a good feeling about you, bro. I think you can be fantastic, bro. Come on, don't disappoint me, bro.
Is that Ian? Dr. Ian speaking?
Ian. Yep.
Ian, my bad.
Doctor,
that's good to meet you, bro. I know Drew. That's how I came in here. Drew's a smart guy and really hard to talk when it comes to talking about science with him. Really impressed on how patient he is too. I've seen his hand up for like an hour and a half. So anyways, having said that, I do want to just challenge the room. You know, I want to go back to 2020. March 18th was when we created this pandemic. And what I'm talking about is just a mandate, announcement, and stock market crash.
pause it. Hold on.
FOMO, right? Like as far as being
Pause
crazy,
it.
everybody in society.
Hold on, here, bro. I'm talking. Wait a minute.
My bad.
You said when we created the pandemic, how did that work? I mean, what did we do? We just went like a fucking Monopoly box and we just made it up like you do a board game, or what? How did that work?
I'm talking about when we got in sync, Dr. Ian. If you understand what I'm talking about, we called an emergency, right? And as a country in America, we called for an emergency. How come majority of the world also did it and it reacted to that, which caused a lot of deaths? If Americans are paying attention, and Chris could laugh all he wants, but go watch the news. What happened to India? Go watch the news. What happened to Africa? Go watch the news in other countries.
What happened in India?
No, hold on. Before we go to India, tell me what happened in Africa. Explain it to me. What happened in Africa?
All of the supplies have been shut down back then. That's what happened. All of these countries.
What did that have to? Right? So no. I mean, so you went from A to F. So help me go A, B, C. Hold on. Let me ask you a question before you can answer.
I'm going on a bigger scope. Worldwide.
No. It's not about It's not about bigger scope, because you see. Let me tell you what you're doing.
Talking about
You're making fluffy, superlative statements that can't be validated or verified to make an argument that no one can argue, because there's no points being made. It's just fluffy arguments. That's why I'm trying to go one point at a time. So you're talking about what happened in Africa. You said all of the reagents and all of the stuff got hemmed up, but that happened globally. So you're gonna have to be very specific. Like what? So first of all, Africa is not a country; it's a continent. So which country are we talking about? Like, what are we talking about? Are we talking about diagnosis? Are we talking about care? Are we talking about PCR tests, rapid antigen tests? What are we talking about? Like, give me some details, bro.
And there's an African space. I want to hear this. There's an actual African in Africa on the space. Okay. I want to hear you.
Yes. Look, trust me, I want to hear it just as bad as you. Trust me. Believe me, this is fantastic.
How about India? I got India.
No.
How about India? What about
you guys? You guys want to pick
up? Stop.
Stop.
I need everyone. Stop it. Look, you're not gonna get off of Africa. You're not gonna just get scouted to India. Tell me what happened in Africa. You brought it up. I didn't bring it up. You did. So explain it.
Okay. Supplies. You remember?
It
happened. Same thing that happened everywhere else. Nobody knew what to do, and everybody was looking for supplies.
I'm sorry,
what is happening? Clarify. Use full, complete sentences. What happened on the continent of Africa?
Supply shortage.
Hold on. So before we continue, let's qualify it. So when you smoke crack, do you hit it out of a bowl or an antenna from a radio, or like how are we doing this? Like what are we doing? I mean,
do you
bro.
Do you want to go to the insults, Dr. Ian?
No, it's not about insults.
Fucking idiot.
No, oh, you can if you want to. It's not going to make it true because I make more money than you, but that's beside the point. The point is that the point is that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, man, if you know what you're talking about, you're a fucking.
Wait, so is the argument? I'm confused. Is the argument that only on the continent of Africa and in India, these are the only two countries in which there were supply shortages?
I think you just used them as an example.
First and foremost,
you guys want to all jump on
Hold on. I muted everyone out. Like, give me a second, bro. So, because I want to take this one step at a time, right? And this is fantastic. So you start out by talking about Western Africa, and then want to ask very specific questions about Western Africa. I'm sorry, you said Africa. I'm sorry, you said the entire fucking continent of Africa, where hundreds of millions
from what I said. Go ahead.
Hundreds of millions of people live, but you know, whatever the fuck, right? Whatever. So you make this superlative point, and then you just say supplies. I'm like, okay, well, what does this have to do with anything? This literally has nothing to do with like the argument. Like, you don't even have an argument, bro. I mean, what exactly is your argument in 10 seconds that it has to do with vaccines or the man? Like, explain. Just give us a thesis statement that is your argument, please. Let's go there.
Suffered over our panic and our ill planning.
Okay.
And I'm talking about deaths, right? My argument is, why is it that you, as far as doctors up here, I don't know your MD or not, Ian. I can see the vegetarian logo lady kind of represents. She might be a PC or whatever. But my point is, when that virus started, everyone went locked up into their little homes and had their little safety. So as Americans, it's really nice 3 years later that we could sit up here and say, you know what, the vaccine, it's on stage 5 now, and we're on level 2 of lockdown, and we need to, increase how much more people are taking it. Nobody's taking it for a reason. Why don't we talk about the statistics of how many people are taking it?
Great. Go ahead. Talk about you. Talk about statistics. Go ahead. Talk about it.
Can I just?
Dr. Ian doesn't think I know some numbers, so I can throw some.
No, I want to go in the direction I'm trying to go right now. I wanted to talk about the statistics. Go ahead and tell me about the statistics. Go ahead. I don't know if you know anything or not. Tell me the statistics and then provide the source material, please.
Anywhere from 50 to 77% of Americans took the vaccine initially, the double dose, fully vaccinated. Statistically, this is as of December 2022, only 7 to 22% have taken it, and I'm talking about statistics of different races.
And I'm gonna take everything at face value. What does that mean? What do you think that means?
What do you think that means,
bro? Don't
people have lost faith because they have seen people dying left and right. People have seen witnessed for themselves, even with people.
I got it. I see what you're saying. I'm going to say it out loud in a single statement. We should utilize people's opinion that are not scientists to make an opinion about a scientific topic.
Okay.
That's what you're saying. You're literally telling me right now.
I'm going to post that statistic, and you can tell me why people are not taking it.
That's fine. You can post a statistic, but I'm giving you the statistic right now just for the sake of argument. Let's say everything you just said is absolutely correct. That has nothing to do with the true efficacy of the vaccine or anything else. It has nothing to what Seeker thinks about the vaccine and its efficacy is irrelevant. Seeker doesn't get to have an opinion about the efficacy of vaccines because Seeker doesn't know what he's talking about. Unless Seeker can explain to me right now without Googling it how mRNA-based vaccines work, Seeker doesn't have an opinion about the efficacy of vaccines. You want to talk about mandates? That's a political point. You talk about it.
I'm not the authority of it, am I? You're the one.
No, it doesn't matter.
With the responsibility.
It doesn't matter.
You're
right. You're right. I do have the responsibility. I do have the responsibility of being somebody who actually knows what the fuck they're talking about, and there are consequences to what I say and don't say because I actually know what the fuck I'm talking about. I have credentials and you don't, right? So you want to go get credentials, go get them, right? But the point still remains. You want to talk about mandates? It's a political point. Talk about mandates all you want. You get blue in the face. Who gives a shit, right? You think it's government overreach, blah blah blah, whatever. That's your right as an American to have an opinion about that. That's fine. What's not fine is you trying to extrapolate the efficacy of vaccines based on your erroneous opinion as a lame doesn't know anything. That's the problem. Nobody's
you know what the problem is? Calling people lame.
No. Let them talk. Calling people. You said the problem is calling people laymen. Are you not a layman?
Nope.
Okay, so you're an expert.
I work in a hospital.
Oh, great. Oh, great. You know, it's good. No, this is good. Let him go. No. It's okay. Before we even get there, you are an expert right now. Explain right now mRNA-based vaccines work. Go ahead. Explain.
You're putting words into my mouth, right?
No.
Okay. I could actually, you know what? This is actually getting
Stop trying to Google it. Stop trying to Google and just tell me how they work. Go ahead.
Ignorant as fuck.
It sounds good. Explain how they work, though. Go ahead and explain. I'm listening.
Did I come up here to explain that? No, I came up here to argue with a bunch of actors here.
I got you. No, it's all good. It's all good.
That get translate the shit.
That's slander of a government employee. That's not a felony. On fucking opposite day, it's not. Keep it up. Keep running that motherfucking mouth, dog. Keep running that mouth. Keep running that mouth.
Can I just ask?
Because at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, you just a motherfucker on the internet with a goddamn ponytail in his beard, dog. I don't think you serious, bro. I don't think you serious, bro. Bro, you disgruntled as fuck. You're upset because no one takes you seriously with your leather jacket and your America flag.
That's right.
And it's okay. It's okay. If you want to be a scientist, right? Go get a GED first, okay? Get your GED, all right? And then go to college, right?
Right.
And then after that, try to go get some higher terminal education, and then you too can be a doctor, and you can wear all of the leather jackets you want, wherever you want, for as long as you want, and people will respect your opinion. But until you do that, no one gives a shit what you have to say about the efficacy of vaccines that you can't even describe how they work in any way, shape, or form.
Same as you.
Hey, Cope, can I just say can I just say something real quick? This is what white supremacy looks like, right? So we started out with this man saying on this stage with a straight face that everybody in America was able to isolate and protect themselves and be safe, which we know is categorically false because the most vulnerable people who could not do that were Black and brown. Then he weaponized an entire continent and the subcontinent of India and made up lies. Millions of people died in India, and that had nothing to do with America locking down, you fucking moron. Because India did not lock down. They literally held religious festivals. Fuck you. My family members died in India because religious leaders and political leaders held election rallies and they held religious festivals, and Delta spread like wildfire. Then after that, they ran out of oxygen and they started using non-medical grade oxygen, and more people died from complications. So stop fucking weaponizing Black and brown people to make talking points that are lies.
So this is the point I keep making, right? Where people come up and their only credential to speak on this, and they feel like they have a right to the sciences because they have white skin. And that's one of the issues that I've had just over this pandemic. I remember, I'll admit, 2020, we were confused, brand new virus. What the hell is going on? My family members are dying, people getting sick. What the hell is happening? You get an understanding of what's going on. I get it. 2021, vaccines come out. Okay, great, whatever, we're going through that. Moving on, though, I'd say maybe from the latter part of maybe the second half of 2021, moving on to where we are now, it's been less and less conversation and concerns about people who really want to know, okay, well, how does this work? What's going on? Those still exist to a degree, but it's more and more of just the complaints of entitled people who lead with their whiteness and think that because they are that color, that they have a right to or a reserved space to whatever really anything in the world, but even as it pertains to infectious disease, pandemic, a novel virus, or immunology that they have never studied a day in their life. He came up here, his only credential is being white. He can't explain to you what mRNA is, how it works. He doesn't know what the mRNA vaccines do, how they're developed, how they work. He doesn't but then wants to speak to the efficacy of that because, again, centuries of conditioning have taught him that I deserve to have an opinion no matter what. Now, in that same breath, there have been amazing people during this pandemic who happen to be white
But they don't lead with that. You know what they lead with? Their character, their integrity, their expertise. I met a bunch of them. I learned from a bunch of them. I met another one here today. Another guy here, Joshua, happens to be white. He's a freaking brilliant mathematician. Like the dude, like, you know what I'm saying? Like he doesn't lead with that. He leads with being a good person. Oh yeah, and by the way, he happens to do that. And this is the issue that I'm having here, is that people need to understand that while maybe politics has taught you that, and maybe some other things in life have taught you that you're a certain color, you deserve to have an opinion, science is where that shit stops. Right there, that threshold, before you get into a lab or before you go into that, all those little privileges go out the window. You either know the information or you do not. If you do not, you need to be quiet. Don't offer opinions. Maybe ask questions about people who know more than you. But when you get to science, and I'm learning, when you see this, all that privilege and all that goes right the fuck out the door. So I'm done talking.
Appreciate you, Drew. Cope, you know, I think we have Naima, and then we can do not Dr. Bill Gates, and then we can do Chris. So Naima, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name.
No, you got it right. It's Naima. And I just as a quick thing to a speaker who came up earlier. It was difficult for us in Africa, but you know, supplies was not our problem. We to this very day, and I'm listening to people talking about having to get an annual booster. We still don't have access to the bivalent vaccines at all. And so, to Ellie, one of the first things that I'm going to tell you is, if your worry is having to take a yearly vaccine that you can actually access, that I can't access, and I wouldn't even call myself, I would be middle class, that I can't access, my children can't access, my parents can't access, the people around me, people who work with me can't access, that becomes a problem, because we put ourselves at risk every single time we go to the hospital or just to the market or just any simple thing, because half the things that you have access to, we don't have, starting with the vaccine. So I live in Nairobi, in Kenya, and we have people dying of yellow fever now in 2022, or getting sick with it in 2023. We're seeing people with polio outbreaks because of a myriad of different things. We're seeing people dying of cholera. So the things that you're worried about of having to take a vaccine to operate, to work, to travel, we wish we could do that for our kids. We wish we could do that for ourselves. We wish we could do that for our communities. We can't. So you have a privilege that you need to actually sit down and ask yourself, is this the thing that I should be complaining about, that I have to take a vaccine to be able to work, or to be able to travel, or to be in certain spaces? We don't have that privilege. We wish we did, we wish we could, but we don't have that privilege. And the other thing that I'm going to say, and my credentials on this are that I work with journalists on the continent, women journalists specifically, and a big part of our work the past couple of years has been misinformation. And one of the things that I've wanted to say, and that I keep saying to experts when we interact with them, is that it's been very great that we have access to all this information and all this data and research and all this kind of things. The thing that we're seeing on the continent quite a bit is that while some conversations, for instance, Veg Doctor, that you were talking about in terms of individual and specific issues around myocarditis, that it does have issues with people. While I think that's a conversation that needs to happen, we've got to be cognizant, especially when having these conversations on social media, that they get taken. And by the time they get to people here, we can't do much to actually sit down and say the problem is not the vaccine. It might actually be myocarditis from COVID, because we don't even have the capacities, and people don't even have the capabilities to afford testing what has killed them. So we're seeing a lot of young people dying from cardiac events, and most of them are not being, talked about. And I've seen it on Twitter. They've started saying that this is because of the vaccine. So I think that there has to be a way that we can have these conversations. I can listen to this and understand what's being said, but I've started looking at this content in the way of the majority of Africans, and I'm saying Africans. We work in Kenya, in Uganda, in Tanzania, in South Africa, in Senegal, in Nigeria, and in Ghana. And one of the things that we have seen is that the highest amounts of misinformation are coming from professionals in the West. So we might be talking and sharing about things that we understand, but we're not explaining it, so that if someone who does not understand the science, does not understand the risks to themselves, and doesn't know how to get this information, and there's language barriers, so someone will read it in English and go translate it in Swahili or in Yoruba or in so that happens, and we're seeing a lot of misinformation coming from a lot of these studies. So very few people know about peer-reviewed studies and non-peer-reviewed studies. Very few people know about looking into methodologies and things like that. So I don't know how that conversation can be brought into spaces like this, so that listeners can actually then take it and be able to talk about it in a way that doesn't lead to misinformation. Thank you for this space. It was absolutely amazing.
Appreciate you, Naima. Thank you very much. I think we can go to not Dr. Bill Gates real quick, and then we can go to Chris.
How's it going, everyone? Dr. BG. I appreciate everyone taking my Moderna emergency authorized use experimental vaccine. I appreciate fierce warriors like the vegan. She's a fierce warrior of the shot, along with Drew, along with everybody. I mean, this is just fascinating. I love it. Look, it doesn't matter that Seeker doesn't know all of these situations behind mRNA. Yeah, he probably doesn't know how it works, but he probably just knows that it doesn't work, and that should be good enough. But
Can you
that doesn't
provide
make sense. Hold on.
provide data on that?
Yeah, because like
To
there's
be
literally
clear,
no data on
Seeker-
Earth.
What Seeker knows could fit in a thimble. He can't even tell you anything about geopolitics in India.
yeah, no, vegan. No, I agree. No, I need you to keep it up, because the thing is this: we
Dude,
need to keep
relax.
the emergency.
Relax. I mean, I realize that you think you're being entertaining and funny. You're actually not, but that's neither here nor there. Just get to your point. You've made a claim that the vaccine is not safe and effective, so this is bringing the fact.
No. Well, I said that it's EUA. It's
It's not.
Oh, no,
It's
great.
actually
No, okay, great.
fully
Let's go. Let's do it. No, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. No, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. EUA, what does that mean?
That means emergency authorization use.
Emergency use. Thank you, yeah, bro.
Authorization, yes.
So, but what's the difference between that and regular FDA approval? Go ahead and describe that, please. Right now, without Google.
Yeah, no, okay, yeah. So I mean, back in 2019, there was a little panel with Fauci and.
Hurry up! I don't
Dr.
give a fuck
Bray.
about Fauci. Answer my question. I don't give a fuck about Fauci. Explain to me what is the difference right now in real time. Go. Let's go.
Well, the difference. First of all, Dr. Ian, I'm a superior doctor, right? You're talking to Dr. Bill
Bro,
Gates, so you better chill out.
explain it.
Number one,
Explain it.
Here's the deal. Here it is. All right, so you probably need at least 12 to 10 years for an actual licensed product.
Okay, so that's not how that works. You're already wrong. You're already wrong. Hush it up. You're already wrong.
The clinical studies.
You're already wrong because you're stupid. Woo-woo. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about because you're dumb.
Do we need a theme song for Bring the Facts?
You're literally, like, you ever went bowling?
Bro, listen, you're talking to the head doctor here.
You ever been bowling? You ever went bowling? Bro,
listen,
you literally
I
about as sharp as a bowling
everybody
ball.
here.
You about as sharp as a bowling ball and twice as dense, dog. You about as sharp as a fucking river stone.
I appreciate you. Hey, listen, we're on the same team, man. You know, Drew's Moderna gain. I am Moderna. What are you talking about? So
hold on for a second. You're not.
What are we talking about here?
I'm sorry. Wait, you're pretending to be Bill Gates. I'm sorry. Bill Gates and Kizmiki Corbett don't rhyme. You want to try that again? And not last time I checked, Bill Gates and McClellan Labs don't rhyme either. You want to try that again?
Well, I don't know. What does Moderna gang mean? What does Moderna gang mean?
Moderna gang means that because I come from a culture that's too deeply tied to gang culture, I decided to make that.
Well, what's
but
Moderna?
If you really want to get it, because for a period of time, all I did was hang out with Bloods. So that's
Are you referencing the Moderna shot?
No, I'm referencing the history that I have of hanging out with blood gang members. This is number one. Number two, since people want to come up here and talk. Number two, I did that because that's the vaccine I chose to get because not only did it show itself,
okay, so there you go. That's my point.
But also because it was created by a black woman.
We're buddies.
Or at least the lead researcher was black woman.
Wait, can we get back to, sorry, are we just going to skip over the fact that he doesn't know the difference between EUA
Oh, no, I know he doesn't know.
and authorization?
Yeah, he know he don't know.
Yes, answer the question.
No, he can't answer the question. You ever met him? Hey, Drew, man, listen, let me ask you a question. You ever met a motherfucker that talk and you can see how he looked from his voice? You ever met somebody like that?
Yeah.
Bro, this dude gives me vibes like, hold on, say something else, bro. I'm gonna tell you exactly how you look. Say something else. Go ahead, say something else. Oh, you don't want to talk now. You don't want to talk now, right? Oh, look at you. You're no fucking fun. Bro, you probably built like a damn, I don't even have a fucking analogy for your ass, bro. You probably built like a goddamn caterpillar going through metamorphosis and some shit. I don't even have a damn analogy for you, bro. You're just not very bright. I'm too tired to have an analogy for you right now. I mean, Rohan, where you find people, bro? Help me understand.
Bro, there's an endless supply.
So, like I said, I'm the expert
so
here.
You don't get to talk no more. You don't get to talk no more. Matter of fact, let me
So-
go ahead and
so
remove you
the
from
only-
speaker. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, buddy.
Honestly, if you're going to try to be satirical, like actually be good at it.
Yeah, that was trash. Well, yeah, you guys know. Simple things. EUA. Okay, great. What's the difference between that and FDA approval? Well, Fauci. See? What I tell you? Did I not tell you earlier, Rohan?
He said Fauci reviewed the data.
See? But
for
no, but to my
EUA.
point,
And he said
did I not say
2019 too, which made it even funnier.
Did I not say that earlier? Did I say as soon as you try to talk, what they do, they bring up Fauci. It's always a key word. It's going to be Fauci. It's going to be Walensky. It's going to be the Democrats, the left. And I should make my own little list, Rohan. Similar to what you did. For real, bro. You should. But real quick, I want to shout out Chris. Chris, thanks for always supporting the room and thanks for coming through and hanging out with us, man. Really appreciate it, bro. You got anything?
No, I was just disappointed our friend Seeker left us because I really was curious what he was referring to when he claimed that we created the pandemic. First of all, which was the original statement he made when he first came up on the mic. But then I also wanted to ask, because I took a look at his timeline, he claims that ivermectin works. He has a tweet about how there hasn't been COVID cases in India because they're using ivermectin. So I'm just wondering if he can explain to us what the evidence is that ivermectin is an effective treatment for COVID and where he got that information from.
I mean, it's also a lie, though, right? They didn't use ivermectin in India.
Yeah, and there's no evidence that ivermectin is effective against COVID-19. There have been several studies, study, and they get larger and larger and larger and larger. And each time they come back and say, yeah, we found no actual benefit. So this is what we're stuck with. Even though, doctors all over the world have been like, really just fingers crossed, please work, please work, please work. And each time it comes off and says, yeah, no, we didn't find anything. So.
And sorry, just to be clear, in Goa and in like Madhya Pradesh or Uttar Pradesh, I don't remember which one, they briefly, out of desperation, started passing out ivermectin during the Delta surge because millions of people were dying, and like literally people were going out onto the street to do these like community oxygen tanks where people would literally just get a couple hits of oxygen. They were so hypoxic. People were tweeting out This is the state of healthcare in India. I need a bed for my mother. It's 12,000 rupees at such and such place, but they have no beds. Like that's literally what was going on in India, right? So there were two regions of India that, out of desperation, used it very briefly. But knowing that it doesn't work, and sure enough, it didn't work in those regions either. The health minister actually took them off the list because they hadn't updated their list. So nobody in India believes ivermectin.
Dr. Priya, I think you're in the matrix. Or is that me?
Sorry.
I can hear Dr. Priya. I think they may be on your end.
Yeah, I
so,
can hear.
So just to be clear, you will never. It is never going to be okay. You are never going to have a good ending if you come in a space with me as someone who is Indian and who has practiced in India, making up bullshit nonsense, suggesting that Indian doctors do not follow science and that they don't know what they're doing and that they're passing out unproven therapies to people. Are there quacks doing it? Sure, there are quacks in America doing it.
Right. Well, he claims, Seeker, it is, that he himself is taking ivermectin as a prophylactic once a month. So
that's definitely how pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics work for that drug. Once a month dosing is all you need.
I mean, I eat a bowl of Frosted Flakes once a month. It's been working out for me.
Let me see.
Who needs steady state levels of drugs in our bloodstream, right, for them to be effective? Nobody needs that.
Look, all you need is ginger ale. Ask any black mama in America.
Let me see if Jammer has anything so we can slide through. Jammer, you have anything?
Yeah, thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak. And I like what's going on in the room. I appreciate what you guys are doing. I'd been over in a previous space about half an hour ago, and it's feels good to come into like reality sometimes, although I see that's trickling in here. So I'll try to make it quick, and I want to aim my ultimate question at Dr. Ian, the veggie doctor, and Dr. Chris. But just before that, I'd like to preface, now I'm on 2 years as a long hauler. And so a lot of the misinformation to me is very troubling, both from the folks that are coming in here that live in the trailer parks, but more so for the people that are doctors. And I just, before I get to the question, out of college and through where I am now, after my doctor really helping me in incredible ways regain some health to where I could return back to work, I've been a medical professional, so I've been privileged to work alongside doctors like you here in the room, and I have an incredible doctor, and so I appreciate everything. And so my question is, and again to the three doctors, and if there's anyone else, where does it go wrong for the doctors, and what is their gain? I think it was Dr. Chris who mentioned that they're all citing each other. Aside from monetary gain, where do they go wrong in their career, and what is their ultimate gain besides like owning the libs and pushing out things? It's gone as far as where there's a doctor in another room I was just in who's advocating consuming your own urine, and that building up immunity can include repeat infections of this along with Ebola and measles. And that
holy shit.
And I have the receipts and screenshots, and there's other folks in here that I recognize as part of my long COVID crew. I have these screenshots. You have a doctor here that was banned previously on Twitter for this type of rhetoric. He's back now because Elmo's running the show. And then he has multiple identities on Facebook where he's cured 8,000 long haulers. He's changed himself to a long hauler. He's created his own vitamins, and he has an unmoderated content to where people are in there suffering, but passing on recipes about how to consume their own urine. And he's not moderating and actually advocating for that. Where in the history of the world and in the medical community do you guys feel that these people have gone wrong, and what is it that they're gaining outside of monetary purposes? Because there's no cure for long COVID, and I feel that the damage that's being done by these doctors and none of you is precluding, and there's other guys, there are people in here that are suffering. And again, I'm lucky enough that my doctor is my hero for 2 years, given everything she has, to at least allow me some recovery to regain my medical career. I'm not a doctor, but I'm not cured, and I still have suffering a lot, and I'm fighting through it. And to see these people, what they're saying and doing, that just defies logic. Where do you go wrong in your career? Like, can maybe one of you or more explain to me if my question makes sense?
Yeah. So, just out of curiosity, the person running your room, that his name wasn't Grant Cardone, was it?
No. Do you want me to say? I know we've got some trailer park folks in here, so I don't want them to go.
Or Mario?
I can say his name if you want,
or sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Dr. Hader.
Oh,
that guy's a clown.
That dude is yeah. Oh,
that's
God.
just one example, and I've got him on his separate Facebook group where people are passing on recipes to consume urine, and he's asking them what benefits they're seeing. He's not moderating.
Okay.
So
yeah, and let me just clarify. So for the audience, so one way you can easily tell if you're in one of these kangaroo rooms with a bunch of, what I call kangaroo, people claiming scientific credentials that don't have it, or maybe some of these FLCC MD types that are selling grift. You notice that none of the doctors, I'm not a clinician. I'm a PhD. I'm a scientist, but you'll notice that none of the MDs on this stage will ever tell you should be taking this in this amount, because first of all, if you're not one of their patients, they don't know your medical history. They're not going to prescribe you anything over the internet, because, and especially if they're not licensed, say, in your state. Now, the thing is, the other thing is that it's illegal, especially if you don't have a medical license, to prescribe somebody over the internet medications. All right, and to tell them to take something that's practicing medicine without a license, and especially if they're talking about doses. But telling people to drink your own urine, that's a whole new level of messed up that I've yet to see on this app. But that the one thing that you can definitely tell is that the people that are trying to sell crap, there's another room that's run by a guy named Grant Cardone, who is trying to sell his own kind of grifting scam company that makes this oxygen concentrator that he has an MD that works for him that will prescribe to anybody who wants it, that he'll say, oh, this will help cure you of COVID. That kind of crap that happens. Anytime anyone is telling you should be taking this, you should be taking this amount, that's correct.
So, but I guess what I'm ultimately at, where, and maybe I'd really be curious to hear the veggie. I'm sorry, I'm not saying your name right.
You just call me Dr. Priya.
Dr. Priya, is that I've been, as I mentioned, I've been privileged. I've worked with med students from my days out of college alongside them as a rep, and I've been in the OR, and I'm obviously not a doctor for a reason. It wasn't for me, but what is their end, aside from what Chris just said with the grift, because I see them selling their own vitamins and doing, what is their ultimate, that you believe, where they've gone wrong, and what is their goal? Because you could see who they all follow. Yeah. They all want the orange person back. I don't understand what the gain is
I think it's
for
a couple
them.
Things. I think it depends. So there are people like Pierre Corey, right? Paul Merrick. Those guys were genuinely, I thought, good physicians. I mean, of course, now we have found out that a lot of the vitamin C data was totally faked by them, right? Which explains why the Citrus ALI trial never showed benefit of vitamin C in sepsis, even though their trials did, because they likely faked their data, right? So I think probably those guys, what happened with them is they did what everybody did at the beginning of the pandemic. Everybody was using ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine because there were mechanistic reasons to think they might work, right? But as soon as the data came out showing that it didn't work, responsible people stopped using it. The problem is that some people doubled down on it, and it ultimately came down, in my opinion, to ego. Like, there are some people in the world that are incapable of admitting that they have chosen a treatment that didn't work. I don't know if they feel like it's a personal failure on their part, if they're afraid of being sued. It's just not clear to me why. But then they sort of go down this rabbit hole, right, where they have now committed themselves to this path. And then it becomes nonsense. It's like, you know, as more and more data came out showing that people were dying taking ivermectin because it wasn't working, then it was just, oh, you're not taking it early enough. You're not taking it early enough. You know, you just need to go back in time and make sure that your mom gives it to you in utero, and then you'll be fine 20 years later when the pandemic hits, right? I mean, so there was to me, there's a lot of ego involved for a lot of people. There's also a portion of people that literally this is the best way they're going to make money. So people like Robert Malone, people like Bhattacharya, they've never seen patients ever in their lives. They're not clinical physicians, right? They're not board certified. So that, and research doesn't pay very well. So sure, speakers' fees do. So again, becoming popular, having clout, suddenly making money doing these things gets you more money than you've ever seen in your life. And you start to feel relevant, right? So again, the ego comes in. And then the last thing is politics, right? As you've already alluded to. If you go into any small community hospital in America and you walk into the doctor's lounge, if they still have them, the TV's always going to be on Fox News. It's the most irritating thing in the world, right? Because many doctors are high earners. And unlike in academia, where there tends to be a little bit more of a liberal political leaning, not everybody, but there tends to be a little bit more of a liberal political leaning, all the surgeons and all the big money makers are all Republican because it protects their financial bottom line, or at least they used to be, right? Many people have wised up with Trump and things like that. But my point is this: once your science is influenced by politics, that's where things start to go wrong, right? As well. So I think it's those three things. I think it's ego, I think it's money, and I think it's politics.
Yeah, and to add on to that too, there's a lot of, if you look at, and there was actually something, there was a chart circulating on Twitter about the political leanings of various fields with of MDs, and one of the things that, you know, kind of stuck out is you notice that, like, for instance, heart surgeons tended to lean very heavily Republican. There's actually reasons for this that, you know, if you for those of us that remember, you know, the days pre-ACA, the hottest topic in terms of healthcare that was debated in politics was tort reform. So the thing about tort reform, and of course, had to do with, you know, the trial lawyers, which historically have supported, have been donors and supporters of Democratic Party, you know, tended to, you know, make lots of profit suing, you know, doctors. And the doctors that held the most liability, i.e., heart surgeons, tended to, at least according to that chart that was circulating on Twitter and, you know, various other data, the doctors that carried the most liability, especially in the private sector, tended to lean heavily Republican, whereas a lot of the doctors that were involved in academia and research and that had a lot of crossover with, you know, in the sciences, like with microbiology and things, tended to be more Democratic because that's where, you know, the grants and things like that came from. But, you know, that has kind of been turned on its head ever since Trump and since COVID. I mean, and, you know, you're starting, I think the field in general is starting to change and you're seeing kind of an alignment, but that's kind of why you see a lot of doctors, you know, you go into any doctor's office and yeah, more than likely you see Fox News. This is, you know, especially with the generation before us, there was, you know, the heavy kind of tort reform debate that dominated, you know, American politics for a while.
I mean, I'm sorry. No, thank you.
Okay, appreciate you, Jammer. Only because we're getting ready to wind down. I'm going to try to put everybody else on like a 1 minute 30-second timer if possible. But definitely appreciate your questions, Jammer, and thank you so much for being here. Dr. E, do you have anything before we go ahead?
That was an excellent question by Jammer, and I think both of my colleagues up here on stage have answered it adequately. It's truly sad. I did post something on the topic. It's truly sad that we have physicians that are literally out to grift. And it's sad. I mean, what was it, Pennsylvania? You had another physician who's been doing the same thing for years, sold junk products supported by junk science to people who watch these, mostly elderly patients who have trouble sleeping at night, watching all these shows, TV shows that sell nothing. You try this magic pill, it will cause you to lose weight. You try that magic pill, it will fix this. You try that magic pill. So you have all these people taking all these supplements and supplements and supplements. The sad part is supplement industry is not regulated in this country, you know? So you're just paying for an expensive urine at this point. And I'm not shocked that another doctor is now telling you to go drink your urine. I mean, you paid for it, right? You might as well drink it. It's sad that we have to make jokes like this, but I don't know where some physician went wrong to start selling junk to people just for the sake of grifting. There is a level of ego, like Dr. Priya has said, that's involved in this also. I mean, knowing the journey that a lot of us have gone through to become medical doctors, I can see where some people tend to feel like they have a God complex as physicians. I can literally see why. But this is not what, if you dial back time enough for every single person who treats patient, a clinician, or even the physicians that don't treat patients, like the radiologists or the dermatopathologists that claim they're treating COVID patients, what they're doing now was never the reason why they went to medicine in the first place. But somewhere along this journey, obviously, it doesn't happen to everyone, but something obviously happened to some people to get to this level and feel and that they can do and say anything, regardless of how many people they hurt, harm, or put in harm's way for listening to their BS. So it's a truly sad statement of reality of the fact where we stand now. And like you mentioned earlier, Jammer, yeah, Twitter Space is being run by clowns. That's why anybody who tells you, who sold you anything before, anybody who was removed for causing harm is now back and with unfettered access to people.
But it's just cruel because I'm not someone who's prone to.
I 100% agree with you.
To being brainwashed, and they're literally harming and potentially killing other people, and also damaging the long COVID because we're being diminished. And I see some of my fellow friends in here, and we're looking for help, and they're ruining medicine on 3 different fronts from the way I see it.
And the rest of us clinicians, myself included, and the ones that will come way after me, they will be living through this madness and dealing with the repercussions of this mess for years to come. That's the unfortunate truth. We don't have enough doctors. A lot of doctors are retiring. I mean, why wouldn't you retire when you go from being hailed as a hero to now you're part of a cabal with Bill Gates and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the worst part is none of this conspiracy theory makes sense. None of it makes sense. None of it holds water. I appreciate Dr. Ian Copeland up here because one of the best things he does is hold people's feet to fire. You made a claim. Now support your claim. No innuendos, no anecdotals, no feelings. Support the claim you made. And I don't know if you know about the app called Clubhouse. That's where a lot of us usually congregate. When they actually read word for word what they post, which it doesn't even matter which study they post, because they just basically go title surfing on Google or Bing and post something. When you literally read it word for word, the conclusion almost always says the opposite of what they thought the title said, because they read the clickbait title and they felt like it supported their points. This is for 2 years now we've been dealing with this mess. I don't see it ending anytime soon. Twitter Spaces has unfortunately poured more gasoline into the fire of mis and disinformation. And that's reality. This is why I urge people all the time, talk to your physician. If you have questions, ask them. You should be able to challenge your physicians with questions. A good physician, when they don't know, they'll tell you, look, I don't know, but how about we look it up? Versus claim that one thing or another will solve all your problems. I have to do this job where I have to sit down with people and tell them, I'm a hospitalist, family medicine trained, board certified. I'm a hospitalist, but I also do locums ER work. In my hospitalist work, I have to look people straight in the eye, not on a daily basis, but pretty much on a weekly basis, several times during that week. Look different patients and their family members, all family members in the eye and say, so-and-so is dying. I'm not asking you permission to put them on comfort measures. I know you wanted to resolve this. I know you would like to have them here for the rest of the year, for as long as possible. But this is not necessarily a decision you need to make because their bodies have already made a decision. It's a matter of whether we're going to respect that decision or we're just going to prolong suffering. You know, this is what I do. And when you do this in real life, it's different because, again, I've treated COVID before when it started. I've gone through it, and I'm now in this next iteration of COVID. And I've had to have many of these difficult conversations with family members. It's a devastating conversation to have. Now to come on stage where people are now minimizing and saying, oh, COVID is nothing. I have friends that suffered from long COVID symptoms 2 years running. I can't imagine what it's like not to smell or even taste anything 2 years running. And mind you, that's actually some of the minimal side effects. Because there's been other people that have had the ultimate sacrifice. They lost their lives. Or there are people who survive today, but they have a tracheostomy in place. They have a PEG tube in place. Or something else neurologically has gone wrong. I mean, how do you deal with this on a daily basis? And then and the worst part is some of these so-called physicians will still share spaces with people that tell you that viruses aren't real. Yet you're over here touting claims about things that can either cure viruses or detoxify you from a vaccine, but you're sharing space with people that tell you viruses aren't real. So we live in a world of mis and disinformation and utter contempt for anything science, data-driven, or facts. And it's unfortunate. I'm complete.
Appreciate you, Dr. Emmanuel. There's 5 people left that haven't spoken. And so what I'm going to try to do is have the room stay open for 10 more minutes. And each person will get 2 minutes. But I'm going to, it has to be 2 minutes. I'm going to be like a beast on it. So I'm actually going to time you. So Kevin, it's on you for 2 minutes exactly. As soon as you unmute. And if Kevin isn't here. You want to go, Kevin?
Hey, hello guys.
Hey, Kevin, you got 2 minutes exactly, Kevin. So starting now.
Yeah, no worries. I came late, so I didn't really hear that much. But all I can say is that again, I'm just very grateful that you guys are continuing this space and so much misinformation. You know, aside from the variant soup, there's a misinformation soup that's making things worse. So yeah, we also have this problem with the snake oil salesman thing over here in the Philippines as well. We also have quack doctors like that. So yeah, we kind of relate, and it's really frustrating because because of the things I mentioned about the inequality with regards to access to healthcare. It's actually people in my part of the world that more often or not are prone to be victimized by these grifters. So thank you for at least continuing to fight misinformation. That's all.
Appreciate you, Kevin. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here as usual. The next person, they went back down. So the next person is Byron, if we can get Byron in. Are you there, Byron? And if Byron isn't there, we can do Lisa.
Hey y'all.
2 minutes.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I am masked. I was masked the last time I talked to this group because my little boy is on day 13 of COVID positive antigen test. And so I really wanted to just get a little bit of information. First, I want to thank you all because this is like a godsend for me. Just being in these spaces and not feeling like I'm losing my mind out here in East Oakland. I do work in community public health for a CBO, trying to reach Black and Latino folks and getting them vaccinated and information that they need and PPE. So this is my life work as of this pandemic, and I appreciate feeling supported in this space. But COVID is now in my house, and my mother-in-law just tested negative after day 12, and my little boy on day 13 is still testing positive on antigen tests. And so I tend to be of the thought of like, if you can detect, you can still potentially infect. And because I'm working from home and he's not in class, I have the luxury, quote unquote, luxury of keeping him here. And I also have access to antigen tests because of the work that I do in the community to test him. So my question is, my husband hasn't, neither my husband or I have gotten it COVID from them, but am I doing the right thing by continuing to keep him masked and to keep him isolated so that myself and my husband do have a better chance of not getting COVID? I feel like in my heart, that's the right thing to do. He's not being harmed in any way. He's getting fed, but he's spending his days in the room. And I'm just wanting to know if y'all are seeing incidents of folks continuing to test positive past this magic 5 to 10 day period that the CDC would like to tell us are these golden numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Any of the mods, any of the speakers want to respond to Lisa really quickly?
So quickly, yes, we do know that you can test antigen positive for quite some time. So it just unfortunately is a matter of just continuing to test. With regards to your second question, it's a very personal decision and we can't give medical advice. That said, if I was in a house with someone who was SARS-2 positive, I would likely ensure that either they were isolated or I was isolated, that we were wearing masks. If we were in a shared space, I'd have a HEPA filter running. And if possible, if the weather allowed, I'd have my windows open.
Okay.
So again, it's filtration, masking, distancing, vaccination.
Yeah.
Right?
So we have a whole house MERV filter. We have about 7 other air filters running. I have windows open. He's masked in the room when he's awake, and he's isolated for the 13 days. So I thought that I was doing the right thing. And I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't crazy because everybody's like, you have to let him out. This is horrible and blah, 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 blah. But I can't have my husband who has comorbidities get COVID if I can help it.
No, correct. And if I recall correctly, you have your own medical history.
So I got COVID, but my mother-in-law is immunocompromised. She just recovered today. She's tested positive for the second, tested negative for the second day, and she's immunocompromised. She's got rheumatoid arthritis, so she's severely immunocompromised, but did well. She made it through this seemingly okay so far.
Lisa, the last thing I would do just very quickly is check in with his pediatrician and make sure they're okay with everything that you're doing, because I don't know your son's medical history, and they may say no, just stay outdoors with him. No one is saying don't interact with your child, right? It's just that what you're doing isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Appreciate it, Dr. Priya. Second to last person is Joan, if you're there, Joan.
Oh, shit. Hey, everybody. Yeah, my name is Wes. I have my dumb Parks and Rec name. First of all, I want to echo everybody else and thank you for this space. It's been so informative and just also very entertaining. And forgive me if this has been covered, and I think Dr. Priya kind of touched on it too, but doubling back to what, Baby Shark, Arbu, and Ellie talked about regarding COVID and vaccine mandates in general. At least 6 vaccines that every school child has to get before they come to school. And I've never heard anybody say shit about that. And so for those of you who are physicians and doctors and researchers and et cetera, have you ever heard a cognizant reasoning for why people are so upset about this, because it seems to me like it's just purely based on political stuff. I've never heard anybody give an actual reason for why they have such a determination to oppose any kind of vaccine mandate when their children have to get that to go to school. And that's something that I've wondered about for a long time, because it always just seems like it's somebody just speaking their, talking points, but not actually any kind of reasoning behind it.
I mean, I think it's genuine fear, right? Like, one of the best articles I've ever read, and I'll try to find it and see if just before we wind down, if Rohan can post it, was an article about a man who married a woman. She had a child from a different marriage, and that is when he found out that she was an anti-vaxxer. He had no idea she was an anti-vaxxer before then. And he made an analogy that was quite interesting. He basically said that her attitude towards vaccines was the same as if you had told her that she had to put her child in a box full of tarantulas to be better. So the fear of vaccines and the lack of logic and ability to see the reason and facts is so deeply ingrained. It's a genuine issue, right? So to me, that is it's not a valid concern, but it's valid in the sense that it's a real fear that people have, right? I mean, you've had people on this stage convinced Gelenick Cope that he's going to be in Nuremberg, right? And that we are committing crimes against humanity. I don't think people get to that point unless they genuinely believe it. Like, people aren't just randomly saying that, right? They genuinely believe that this vaccine is experimental gene therapy, even though it is not. And so from their standpoint, there is a logic to, like, if you truly believed something was an experimental gene therapy that was killing a bunch of people, you would oppose it as well. But yes, you are right that none of it is actually true.
Thank you for that, Dr. Priya. The final contributor today is Princess. Princess, if you're there.
Hi, yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, 2 minutes on you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time and everybody else's time. COVID finally caught up to me after 3 years of masking. I'm fully vaxxed. I took my bivalent shot in mid-November, and I tested positive for COVID last week. So it's going to be 7 days now. And after testing positive, I started trying to update myself with the latest information again. I had taken a break. But after testing positive, I thought, okay, let's see what's really going on with COVID right now. And I've come across a lot of professionals, medical professionals, in social media, that some of which are saying, it kind of freaked me out, because they're saying that once you have COVID, it permanently kills your T cells, and that it should be considered like AIDS or like HIV once you're infected. And I want to know from you guys if this is true, if I'm like, am I coming across quackery? There's a lot of misinformation out there, but it's really scary to hear that. So any thoughts on that?
My thought is, I'm so glad Edward's not here, because this is the bane of his existence. We've heard this before, and the truth of the matter is that SARS-CoV-2 is not a retrovirus. It does not, kill your T cells or anything of that nature. It is certainly something to be very, very, you want to take very seriously, but it should never, ever, ever, ever. And I'm born in 1986, so I'm barely old enough to even speak on this, but like, it should never be compared to HIV or AIDS. That is a completely different situation altogether. And yeah, so no, it doesn't do anything like that at all. I mean, there are, other risks, a litany of other risks that you're under or facing if you're getting infected, repeated infections as well. And you can talk to the neurological effects, not just even the physical effects. When I say physical, I mean the cardiovascular effects, the pulmonary effects that you may be facing, and all that. But yeah, no, it is not HIV. This is a coronavirus, novel coronavirus, yes, but it's not a retrovirus like HIV. I'm done talking.
So this is Dr. Emmanuel. this is how crazy that's the statement, the concern you have. This is actually a almost 3-year-old conspiracy theory that doesn't hold water, that doesn't hold weight, and has zero bearing with reality.
All right, man. So that's the conclusion of this particular bill. And like all the other bills, it doesn't allow us an opportunity to replay the show. If we were able to replay the show, we could catch the beginning of it to make sure that we didn't miss anything, which we did, because look how long the show was. The show was 6 hours. We've been on this stream at least 3. At least 3. So can you get COVID from fellatio? No, man. You can get COVID. You can get COVID penis though. You can't. You can get it in your semen. It can be sexually transmitted. Remember, we got small studies on that. It's not so common, but there's studies that exist that would alleviate that sexually, well, physically, sexually, that could be the case. Nah, people is getting monkeypox from eating booty. Pause for station identification. But nah, man, look, I'm gonna let everybody get out of here, man. We've been on this thing almost 3.5 hours. We got some very entertaining information up out of this particular bill. What I'm going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is I'm actually going to set this show aside, meaning that I'm gonna go into YouTube and I'm gonna make it private for a little bit. Now, the reason that I'm gonna make it private is because I'm gonna upload it on Science with Sean. And you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna allow us to revisit it on Science with Sean and kind of get into some of the speculative questions. Plus, with some of the stupid stuff that was said during the build, I don't want YouTube to try to ding the channel or anything like that. So it is what it is. But man, look. Let me see. Hold on one second, y'all. I'll go come with some African stuff today, man. But Ed sent me the debate, the conversation, and I was like, man, let me just tap into the conversation. Let me see here. Your channel. Manage videos. I'm supposed to be watching the Hill and Harlem stuff. I don't even remember. Okay, so yeah, I would get into it soon. Boy, they sure be claiming they little copyrights. They going crazy over there on that Lupe. But nah, I mean, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna load it up and we'll revisit it. So man, look, peace, blessings, soul, all that good stuff. Y'all enjoy y'all evening.